if their head's on straight, they'll look at that and won't just look at the dollar figure that they throw at you. Because to like a Facebook, unlimited money. Doesn't matter. If they want something, they're going to buy it. So you need the power in the founder to say, no, fuck you. I don't like what you're about. I don't like what you're going to do with my technology, because like for humankind as a whole, I don't see how you're going to benefit, or how you're going to benefit humanity with it. So I think the power needs to come in the entrepreneur and the founder, not to get greedy and to say, no, I don't care if you offered me an extra $100 million over my competitor. I like your competitor's intentions with what you're going to do. I see a better fit for my tech inside of this company from like an efficacy standpoint.
What's cooking, everybody? Before I get into the conversation we had today, I do want to point out something that if you are watching on YouTube right now, you may have noticed on the front snippet of the episode there. And that is, the bunker is officially complete. Now, I don't have a camera pointing to it right now, but you'll see it again in a few minutes. I'm talking about the back end, where the background behind the guest. So I had created a soundproof kind of homemade setup to be able to get that crisp sound we have in here. But in order to officially complete the bunker, we had to go fully professional. And I want to give a huge shout out to my mom, who had the design idea to put some red curtains back there. And if I may say, they look fire. And this place officially, not that it wasn't complete before, but the bunker feels lit now. So very, very excited about that. And I mention it because we didn't talk about it in the conversation today, because my guest and I were actually in meetings together all day and kind of rolled right in and did the podcast and forgot about it. So I'm recording next week's episode in the next day or two, so I'm sure we'll talk about it there, but very, very cool to see it done. And again, shout out to Mom. Anyway, today's conversation might remind you of one that I had in January. It was number 30 with Anthony Fenue. And if you remember, or you didn't see that episode, Anthony was, or is, the co-founder of a company called Soar, which is, let's just call it what it is. They are a software company that produces live-streamed holograms, and it's absolutely fucking insane. So I have been lucky enough to develop a great relationship with Anthony and his two co-founders since then, and you'll actually hear today, I'm not going to get into the details in the intro because it'll take too long, but me, along with Chaz Servino from number 40 and Giovanni Gussin from number 34, who is also now full-time at Soar, all of us and the Soar guys have been working on some things the last 4 months or so that's been very cool, and I've kind of had through that a front row seat to the tech itself, and it's absurd. So I am joined in the bunker today by none other than one of the other co-founders, Mr. Riley Horvath. The great thing about the three guys at Soar, and that is Anthony, Riley, and Baker, is that they are all different. They all play off each other so well. They bring different things to the table, different styles, but they have the same vision, which is critical. So we had a lot of great conversations today, broadly around like vision and how tech can be used once it's actually put out to the world, and some of the worries these guys have about that. And also got into like some wild shit. Like Riley previously worked in solar paneling. So that was his startup before he ever got to Soar, which I think started 4 or 5 years ago. And so he knows a lot about that. He knows a lot about Teslas and the electric car market, and had some interesting thoughts on how we're converting to that market from gas cars and how fast that's going to happen. And that was pretty crazy to me. But I can't even remember some of the other stuff. AI, we talked about AI and had some conversations around that I don't think were related to Soar, but we should do that in the future because there is some relatability there. And it was just a fun conversation. So stay tuned for a little. There was a point in there where we did talk a little bit about some of the work we've been doing and gave some context there. So you'll notice that later in the episode. And, I'll answer questions around that as they come in if people have them. But been really cool working with these guys. Very excited to have them in the studio, and very excited to do this as they're scaling up. I can't talk about where they are in the funding process. That's not public. All I'll say is that you will probably, hypothetically, hear something somewhat soon about that. But the company's growing massively in size, and the reality that their tech is going to be changing how we do things in society has set in. And it's just very cool to get them on that upswing, to see what they were thinking at this time. This is the type of content that we'll look back on years from now and be like, damn, what were their thoughts then? What changed? What didn't? I love that. I love that about this job. I love that about the people I bring in here and catching that moment in time. And we're going to do it again with Baker. They're Justin Baker, their third co-founder, in a month or two. And these guys will continue to come in here. They're great guests, incredibly interesting, and they're on the cutting edge. So I hope you enjoy. Now, you've heard me talk about my friends at 8 Sleep. If you haven't heard me talk about my friends at 8 Sleep, they are the first sponsor of this podcast, to which, thank you again for that. Amazing. But 8 Sleep is the mattress company. They are not a mattress company. They are the mattress company because they are the first legitimate mattress company that actually integrates tech into the one thing that we absolutely all have in common besides like eating and shitting, which is sleeping. So if you currently have a mattress that you like, right? Like you love the feel of it and you don't want to invest in a mattress, fine. 8 Sleep has a Pod Pro cover, which goes on a queen bed or a king bed, depending on what you have. And it uses their tech to be able to give you the same thing that their main product, which is the Pod Pro mattress, which is the full thing, gives you, which is it optimizes your sleep for how you sleep. It measures you in real time, works with your body temperature, and as I always say, a whole bunch of other scientific shit that I am not going to get into and overcomplicate it, to allow you to feel well rested and not have restlessness in the middle of the night as well. Like you won't get sleep interruptions as much. This stuff is insane. It's a life changer. You won't regret it. So it is the two products. Like you don't have to get the full mattress, but if you're in the business of getting a new mattress, get the 8 Sleep Pod Pro. It's also like, it starts at like less than $3,000, which is insane to me because you get shitty mattresses that are way more than that. So the pricing's incredible. But the second thing is the 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, which is, okay, you like your mattress, you don't want to invest in one, but you want to feel like you got 8 hours of sleep when you really got 6, which is what this tech does. You get the Pod Pro cover. It's cheaper. I think it starts at around like $1,700 or so. And what, by the way, why are you doing this? Like, why am I telling you this? Because you can use the link in my description or the link in my Instagram bio and then use the code TRENDIFIER at checkout on either one of those two products and get $100 off. So if you don't want to get the cover because you don't want to improve your sleep, no problem. But if you have friends who do, or they're in the mattress purchasing business right now, tell them about 8 Sleep. Tell them it's going to change their life. And tell them to use my link in the code TRENDIFIER at checkout because guess what? That helps us eat around here. So really appreciate you guys spreading the word on that. Anyway, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. And if you're on YouTube right now, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, and leave a like and comment on the video if you would. Please, huge help, seriously. To all the people who have been leaving a 5-star review with a comment on Apple Podcasts, I say it every week. They're excellent. They're a huge help for new listeners coming into the page. And I know I have a lot of listeners on Spotify, which is great. Stay on Spotify, all good. And I have a lot of viewers on well, we're getting there on YouTube. Stay on YouTube, no problem. But if you own an iPhone and you can, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave a 5-star review with a comment, I do have an audience there. It is a big help for people deciding whether or not they're going to give the show a try. So I would really, really appreciate it if you took a second to do that. Finally, I want to thank all the people who have been spreading the word about this show. It's been organic to this point. I hear about it in DMs and comments on TikTok or even YouTube sometimes, and that's amazing because word of mouth is the best thing we could do here. And I'm trying to build something that you guys enjoy, and having people spread it around to other people who listen to podcasts and would like this type of content is enormous. So I did want to mention that for those of you who haven't, or even people who have, if you can share your favorite episode from recent episodes, or just your favorite episode from any of the ones we've done with one friend this week that you think would enjoy the podcast, that would be incredible. If we could start doing that, we're going to build here. And I'm not slowing down. This is what I do. This is what I do. This is my bread and butter. This is my job. This is everything. So it's going to keep getting better. And thank you to everyone who's bought in early on. I will never forget that. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian Dorey, and this is TRENDIFIER. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where is the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions. this Doers right here, I bought when you were going to be coming in.
What, 2 months ago, 3 months ago?
Yeah. And then we had to wait to do it. So I'm like, you know what? Me and Bitcoin Jesus killed that much of it.
I would have been so upset if it wasn't cracked open.
Yeah. Well, this was like one night. That was, and we killed another bottle outside of that. That was an interesting night. But I saved the rest of it, because it was bought with the intention of you being in here. So we drank something else in between. But
very cool.
Glad you finally did it, man.
Oh yeah, man. Happy to be here.
Good. Let's get this bad boy open. Are you I didn't even get to ask you. Are you a Scotch guy? Whiskey? What's your thought?
Honestly, don't have much of a preference.
I like that. I always tell people if it's got liquor in it, if it's got alcohol in it, I'll drink it.
Yeah, if it's wet, I'm good to go.
That's good. So what's been going on, dude? Obviously, I had Anthony on here, so people are familiar with the company if they heard that episode. But
yeah. Circle back. Great opportunity to take a little snippet from the previous episode.
Yeah.
No, things have been a little bit crazy. Just trying to manage the scale of everything we're doing here. It's crazy. It's been like one hell of a journey.
Yeah.
And to get to the stage that we're at now we never had a thought that it wouldn't happen. But being here and kind of seeing it come to fruition after all these years of like dreaming of these days, feels pretty good, I have to say.
Can you just remind some people who didn't hear that episode what your company Soar is? And to be clear, you're a co-founder with Anthony and Justin Baker, but just what you guys do and what you can say about where you're at.
Sure, yeah. So we're a volumetric media company. Essentially, it's real-time streaming of 3D assets. Those 3D assets are typically humans. So I like to talk about it as like telepresence. So you and I could be having this conversation, and you would be like holographically popped up in my living room. And so kind of like think of a Snapchat filter where you could pop up and there's like a dancing hot dog on your table, little gimmicky things. So now they're no longer created. Now they're just kind of real assets, no more animation that goes involved with it. And now you can just kind of click a button and stream these assets in real time.
And it's actual people. So like you and I. And it could be live.
Correct, yeah.
And you guys are the only people that have the compression algorithm capable of doing that in high quality in the world.
Yeah, we actually are.
Still wild.
Yeah, not many people have the opportunity to say that, but yeah.
Cheers, man.
Cheers.
Right on that. Let's get this party started.
Oh, yeah.
So, I know, obviously, like now, ever since Anthony was in here, we've all gotten to know each other, and we talk about a lot of different things, like off camera, but I know there are some things, obviously, that are not for public consumption yet, so we'll be careful with that today. And if I start to talk about something where it's like, can't go there, just tell me. No problem. But on a broad level, take me through, because we didn't really do this when I talked to Anthony, exactly the timeline of it. Take me through when you guys started Soar. You started without that tech. Like, you started without that compression algorithm that, in English, allows you to create the holograms that you guys now create. So essentially, my understanding is that you guys were like, okay, we know we want to get into VR/AR, but the tech isn't there to live stream anything. So we need to build whatever that underlying tech is, so the compression, to be able to do that. And then you guys did, but that wasn't like yesterday.
No, this has been a bit of a journey. It's probably been going on 4.5 years now. So I guess we could take a step back, go back to the beginning. Initially, when we first started, me and Anthony have been friends our entire lives. Both dropped out of college together. We were on the same page, and was like, okay, let's both feed in. Let's go for it. And initially, we started in sports. We saw a huge gap between technology and sports. So we started creating AR experiences inside of sports organizations. So like all the major leagues, started on the team level actually, and then went to the league level because like the sales process was a bit easier.
When you say AR assets, I'll stop you sometimes today just to be clear on stuff. So obviously, augmented reality. But you gave the hot dog example a couple seconds ago from Snapchat. So when you're saying like you were looking at making AR assets with sports teams, like what's an example?
Okay, so this is a good way to look at it. We created like we shouldn't say the world's first, but one of the first facial tracking algorithms for face paint and face filters. So like what you see today on Snapchat and Facebook, the technology that they've all adopted. We built that before it was really mainstream, and we had no idea what to do with it. We were like, it's really cool stuff, and obviously there's value there, but in the world, maybe not yet. So we were trying to piece together, and I remember we were selling this to the teams, and they're like, this is crazy. I have no idea what to do with it. You want me to my fans to put these filters on their faces? And we're like, yeah, it's going to help with engagement. And they're like, I don't know, is there any data behind it? We're like, trust us. And then you fast forward like 4 years, and you can't go on a social platform without seeing something like that. So that's where we started.
Now, how do you just create something like that, though?
Back then, we had an engineer. His name's Nick. He's still with us today. He's been there since the beginning. But I don't know, we were just a couple crazy guys with a vision. It was like, yeah, let's like build some cool shit. Huh? What do you say? And I guess that's what we did. And
so you were able to build that. Like, what year are we talking with that? Like 2017, maybe?
Yeah, it was mid 2017. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Got it. But you were still building, because that was a simpler technology. You could do that with far less bandwidth than what you're doing now. So you were still building this compression. What was that process like? Like, who were you bringing in? Were you guys just building it yourselves? Like, yeah. It's crazy to me. I'll say this before you answer. That, like, as I say, 3 assholes in Jersey figured this out, but you guys did, and it's, I would love to hear the story behind it.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll never forget the day where the idea came to fruition. We were in like this pivotal moment where the face filter thing, it was like, okay, it was kind of gimmicky, wasn't gaining like a ton of traction, and we knew where we wanted to go and how big we wanted this to go. Our whole dream was always like build a unicorn. We want $1 billion business, and we said we're not going to get there with this, just this. So how do we make it bigger? So we're working with like at the time, wow. Yeah, so we were working with a couple influencers at the time and thinking, wow, really cool, a full-blown AR social platform would be really, really cool. Super immersive. You could scroll through and like all of the assets that you see or the pictures that you see would like be placed in AR. And then from there it was like, okay, is this possible? And we went back and forth for a bit. And so me and Ant were sitting in one of our rooms, and we're said, okay, why don't we just like go back, talk to the engineers, and see what's going on. So we brought it downstairs. They were all working in the basement of our house at the time. And then, so we went down, and they're like, absolutely not. You guys are fucking crazy. Like, this isn't possible in the world. And we said, okay, yeah, we'll circle back. And every like couple weeks, be like, guys, this would be really cool. Like, what do you think? Can we make this happen?
Can you walk through that one more time? Because you were saying like you wanted to take pictures and put them behind somebody. Like something, like we kind of have that today now, but we didn't then?
Yeah, so good way to look at this. So take Instagram, for example, and make the entire platform where you're scrolling through different objects that you can take out of just a screen and kind of place them in your environment so it feels more 3D, more engaging, more immersive. Obviously, that's where like the advertisement is going. So the way we look at it is like, the advertising world and 2D ads are just diminishing rapidly.
Yeah.
When that happens, it's going to be very hard to monetize on certain platforms. So you need to pick that engagement up. How do you do that? That was like the key behind it. It's like, okay, add another dimension to it. And every time somebody looks at something, make them say, holy shit, what is that? And make them keep on rewatching and rewatching.
Right.
So yeah, that was the thought there.
Now, I always think of this like in terms of like before Pokemon Go and after Pokemon Go. Because that was the first time where, I mean, yeah, we had the Snapchat filters and everything, but that was the first time where you picked up a phone and you held it around like a flashlight almost in your environment. And then on the phone, something appeared in the image in front of you, but it wasn't actually physically there. So you guys are, I mean, to go back to what we were saying at the beginning, you're building that, but you're building it with people, and I guess like, to what you were just talking about, like brand activations.
Exactly, yeah. So if you
pull that in just a bit.
Yeah. Thank you. If you use the logic of Pokemon Go, at its core, what is it? A scavenger hunt that people can walk around and interact with other people?
Yeah.
Why was it so catchy? Because it was something new. It was very immersive. There were these objects were like being placed in your real environment. But at its core, it's just a 2D, like a regular scavenger hunt. If it was just a scavenger hunt with no AR, nobody would have used it. But they created one of the most popular gaming platforms of all time.
Yeah, I still remember our intern back where I worked. Couldn't find him one day for like 4 hours or something like that. We went outside. He was like fucking holding the phone all around. We're like, are you kidding me? Yeah. But people were it was like the new shiny object. And it was like Pokemon, but adults were enthralled with it because they could exist in this world. And I think the most surprising thing to me is that clearly behind the scenes, the tech has come such a far way, but people haven't necessarily gotten there yet. Even with COVID, it's like we got used to the whole remote thing with Zoom, but it's still like real. There isn't this movement yet, but it's like right there of people who are like, yo, we're just going to make everything 3D now, and like we're going to put ourselves in places.
Yeah, I mean, COVID, the way we look at it is it didn't change our lives too much because like we had this work-life balance. We've been doing this for a very long time. We've been working from home and just kind of doing that for a while. So it didn't change too much on that aspect. But what it did do is speed up the process of adoption for like emerging technologies. So now I would love to see the data on American screen time, how it inflated over the past 12 months. I would love to see that data. But with that, they're getting bored with just regular 2D things that you've seen for the past 10 years. You needed something different. And now everybody's itching for it and they're eager for it. And especially when you look at entertainment, right? So there's nothing in person anymore. So you need like another level of intimacy. So that's kind of where we saw this going, but it just happened a bit faster, which is good for us, obviously. Yeah. But yeah, so that process was interesting, adapting to the speed and the pickup that we had to scale at. So yeah.
Well, I think people got used to it. It's not so much that it wasn't there. They just got used to the fact that Zoom, for example, best one, that lag time, there's still like a little bit of it. But you talked on Zoom or something like that 3 years ago even, there's like a pause, like, there's that thing where it's like, it's not personal. And then suddenly people realized the tech had been there for maybe a year or so. I remember using Zoom like a year before that, like, wow, this is fast as shit. All it took is like some shockwave for adoption to be forced to happen, but what you're doing, that wasn't a part of being forced. It's not like suddenly they're like, you know what, we need holograms everywhere. But it's like, we're almost at that bootloader to it,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because I remember before it was a standard where like you would have a phone call to make the introduction. It's like, okay, how fast can you get to LA? How fast can you get to Miami? And we were on a plane like, I don't know, 20 days out of the year, and it was exhausting. And you think like, oh, wow, it sounds great, like a lot of fun. It's not. You brush your teeth in the airport. You're getting dressed in airport bathrooms and stuff, just going to like meet somebody new. Where now, I guess the world becomes much more ergonomic where everybody's okay with, okay, let's just hop on Zoom, and nobody wants to leave their house. I'd rather take this call in my pajamas. And like for big executives in the world, I think it's great for everybody to adopt that. I really do.
Do you think it's going to go back a little bit?
Yeah, I hope it does.
Yeah.
And it will, naturally. Everybody's eager for it. But yeah. But back to like where we started and that kind of thing. So
yeah, we lost the compression. Like when did that hit?
Yeah. So I guess it became like, okay, this needs to be bigger than sports. Obviously, it needs to be bigger than like face filters. We knew that, but also the industry that we're trying to tackle needs to be larger. So we said, all right, we have sports. It's pretty much locked down. We know everybody. We've worked with almost all of them. We're not really tapped out yet. How do we get this bigger? So, okay, take a step back. Why don't we just take over all of entertainment? And then from there, you go from entertainment to advertising industry to every major brand, and your market cap gets much, much, much larger. So we took a step back and stopped on servicing as many clients just strictly in sports, dumped into an R&D phase. All right, let's take a step back. Let's see if we can actually build this thing, because if we can, it's going to change the world forever. So it's exactly what we did. And a couple of short months later, it was like, okay, we have a really rough proof of concept here. It works and it's possible, but we're going to need this, and this, a lot more resources, and just a hell of a lot more bandwidth just to make these things come true.
Your holograms are like, I think of them as, the high-end Mercedes-Benz, right? And it needs a road. You can't serve it. You can't have the car to drive and rip it up to 160 miles an hour if you don't have a road. And I look at the compression as kind of the road. So the interesting thing about tech to me, as someone who hasn't been in there iterating it like you guys have, is a lot of it, like the greatest new innovations, a lot of them come from maybe having 98% of it done open source, right? Like not patented, just kind of there for people to hack on or whatever. And then someone builds that last 2%, at least to where the now 100% is. It always changes, right? And then suddenly, boom, the doors open. And so when I look at you guys, it's not like when you were starting off with the sports teams, you were building these kind of one-off, like stuff on the faces and things like that you could do where you kind of capture something creatively quickly in a picture or a quick video. It wasn't, hey, we're going to live stream, the fucking team playing and it's going to be on your coffee table in a few years. You had to get the tech to get there. And so you guys got to the compression, had the breakthrough 2018, maybe? Late 2018?
Yeah, I would say so. It wasn't perfect back then, but there's still a lot of work to do. But that's when it became possible. And we saw it and said, oh, wow, all of the research we've done, it actually makes sense and it exists and it's actually something that's doable. Yeah. So I think going back to paving that road, you got to look at the major organizations, look at Snapchat and Facebook and what they're building. I like to say we're a bit of quite a few visionaries. So we look at things 5-10 years ahead and see what happens. So when the face filter thing came about, it was this will be a thing naturally. The world's going to think we're nuts for it right now, but just watch. And then we take a step forward and look at where we are today. The same thing's happening right now, but the process is sped up a little bit. So right now, you have Snapchat building with all their lens partners. So you're getting all the major agencies involved that pretty much run all of media. They're creating a lot of the immersive experiences.
And the ad agencies and stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they're building on top of Snapchat and that platform. So as you see them innovating and seeing them adopting immersive technologies little by little, because they know what's happening as well, but they can't. The world isn't ready for it yet, and they're very consumer facing. So you can't publish everything that's up their sleeves right away. But if you look at what they've done in the past couple of years, you can see the direct path of where the world's about to go.
Does anyone click? You mentioned this a little bit ago at some point in some context, but does anyone even click banner ads anymore?
Do you?
No. That's what I'm asking. And I know my dad doesn't either.
Yeah. Do you put any on your podcast?
0.
There you go.
I wouldn't if they asked me to.
Yeah.
It's so I still see this though. I look for it when I go to a webpage. I'm all right, where are they? I'm never going to click them, but I'm actually thinking, where are they? And I see you go to ESPN.com or something or CNBC. There's fucking one up there. There's 3 on the side, and I'm like, who is paying for this?
I would love to know, and
for
why?
What?
I agree.
So what you guys are looking at doing is, if you can create these experiences, and I may go crazy here, and if I go too crazy, you reel me back in, but you could create a world where through someone's phone, they could walk into the mall almost. And that's not a banner ad from Macy's or whatever department store. That's I'm going to walk in there and see what they're selling.
You're virtually inside of Macy's, and that dress that you want to buy, you can actually buy it when you integrate it with e-com sites, and you pretty much turn your whole house into a shopping mall. Based on, we can go down that path if
Let's
you
do
want.
it. I'm here.
Yeah. So some of the things we're working on now, obviously we're deeply tied into the music space. So we're working on some really cool projects where you can bring essentially a Coachella, and you can have your house be the venue now. So you can have Post Malone placed in your living room. You can have Cardi B in your bedroom, and all these brand activations throughout. And you can literally turn your own home into attending a Coachella festival.
Okay. Because I've known that now, and it still blows my mind. But, when Ant was talking about being able to have the tech that could pull off, a Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather type fight right now, that's just crazy to me. And now I've seen it, so it's double crazy. But in order to do something like the full scale, what you just talked about, like Post Malone in your living room, that end needs hardware on the back end too, obviously. Or not obviously.
To view or to capture? To view?
No, to view it.
No, not. You can do it from your mobile phone. You can walk around your house and
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me state that more clearly. When you're saying you could put Post Malone in the living room in front of you, you're required to use your phone to see him there.
Correct.
Hold your phone up. Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. Because obviously that's pretty crazy tech, but it's it's you guys are live streaming and capturing real things at a way higher level than Pokemon Go did with a similar concept a few years ago, because you have the bandwidth to do it. The second level to it is where someone can turn something on like a TV, and they don't have to pick up their phone. They can text on their phone, and it's right there. You guys do the software. So you create the ability to capture that content and then produce it. Whereas something like that, It's not like you could just integrate your software into my TV right now and suddenly like Post Malone's going to be right here. You have to have, someone's got to build out hardware for that. Are you guys thinking at all about getting involved with that, or are you looking for other people to do that and then you'll just be ready?
I think that comes down to like strategically picking your hardware partners properly. There's entire businesses that are built solely around hardware, and we're not one of them. We're built on the software side. So we kind of leave that to the experts. We're not naive to say we're the best at that. So we'll kind of stay out of that world. Eventually, it'll make sense. You can acquire a hardware company that's working on some cool stuff.
I was going to say, I didn't even think you guys were doing much around. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but like based on that logic, so we talked about everybody's screen time increasing, right?
Yeah.
With that is everybody's rapid decline of attention spans. So if there's one extra step, even if it's a very simplistic step, that adds a little bit of a layer of complexity, it's gone. They're not even going to click through it. You're not even going to get through the process. So that was our whole thing, was like, we need to make this as streamlined as possible. And that was the difficult part, because you have this unbelievable technology that nobody's even seen before. And how do you make it as simplistic as possible where your everyday TikToker can use it?
It's simple enough on something like a Snapchat and TikTok because it's a filter.
Correct.
Right? They scroll over, oh, that one puts this on my face. And that goes back to what you were doing at first. But I think it blows my mind that you can even think about making, and you have to, you're right, but you can even think about making something like, we're going to capture you're going to capture all of yourself and put yourself in your friend's phone and make that simple. And the reason I say that is because no one's ever done it before. And if I thought about it, I could think of other ones. But the one that comes to mind heavily where I feel like we made that leap was a lot easier, though. And that would be like what Steve Jobs did with, I'd say, the iPod first, where he was like, I want people to be able to get to their artists in 2 clicks or whatever. And he wanted that. And he didn't even want labeling on some of it. He wanted as few buttons as possible. That's still like a device that someone can learn how to use. What you're talking about exists in the not physical world. So how do you, I guess the question is, how do you get something simple when you have to get it adopted first and teach it to everybody?
I think that comes naturally, just like the evolution of technology, right? So think about it this way. In the 90s, early 2000s, internet was a big thing, and people decided, okay, why don't we just digitize information? And that became the internet. It was the biggest thing ever. And then there came, and that was obviously run by Facebook or Google, and then comes Facebook and said, okay, why don't we start digitizing people's relationships? And that's when you see Instagram come about, and they start digitizing entire relationships and human interaction. Now we're in this third wave of this, I call it the evolution, where you're digitizing the entire world, right? So now I can scan that bottle, and now it's a 3D asset, and it happens in real time and very easy to do. So that part gets a little bit crazy, because essentially once you're collecting all this 3D data, you can have a one-to-one representation of the entire world. So if you think 10 years from now, if you think about evolution, the entire world will be digitized, and you'll be able to explore it at will from a virtual setting.
How far does that go, though? And to be a little more specific, when I'm thinking of it in my head, I'm just morphing everything I know that exists publicly in technology with the 3D space. So I think 3D printing as an example, which is entirely different than what you do. But maybe use a straight example to point out what I'm getting at. If I'm to go back to the Macy's example, walking into the store through my AR experience, let's say I'm just doing it through my phone. It's not some hardware that's actually set it up for me. And I am now shopping in the store and I see a suit that I like. Are we going to be able to try on that suit digitally, and then even be able to do something customize it for yourself on there and then have it 3D printed somewhere and fucking mailed to you?
At some point, yes. So think about it. You can put this face filter on your face because it tracks every little data point in your face and the movement of your cheeks and when you blink your eyes and things like that, right? So you can place something on your face, same exact technology that would track it to your body. So you could put a suit on your body, you could tailor it, do all that kind of thing, and have a virtual try-on. So yeah, it's not too far-fetched.
10 years.
At this rate, I wouldn't even say that. I'd say a little bit sooner.
Now, how close do you think you guys are to live stream? I mean, I guess your tech is there, but based on partners that you're actively building or working with on like a smaller capacity, how close do you think you guys are to live streaming a concert or actually doing like the fight? You know, obviously you're not doing this one that's coming up here in a week or a couple days, whatever it is. But, you know, like how close do you think you are to getting the yes of like, oh yeah, you know what, we'll do that?
Oh yeah, we have some pretty cool concert experience coming up this year. Yeah,
wow.
so a couple of the festivals that are coming up, the Imagine Festival's coming up in a few months, some like that, and as well as like for like the UFC and some of the boxing. Obviously, boxing has been huge lately, and it kind of fits like our technology perfectly because the capture space is relatively small. So you can have like a holographic boxing match pop up and have. So right now we're in their training camps. So learning how to do like a back kick. You can now have like 6 degrees of freedom and move around that entire UFC player. Or like say the weigh-in, if you want to do the weigh-in before. And then when you tie that into like sports betting and things like that, and the people that are betting can actually see the actual size of the person that's about to be fighting in their living room, it adds like a whole nother level of immersion, and it kind of blows people away.
So it can be, as I'm just thinking like the size of a phone, because right now it's holding up the phone. Like the size of a phone holding it up in front of me. I can kind of like know based on the space around it, oh, Francis Ngannou's 6'4" and built like a goddamn brick shit house.
You could place him in real size, and if you stand next to him, you're going to be towering.
So you have to, but you right now, without the hardware, you have to do it like this. Like hold the phone, and for people listening and not watching, I'm like acting like I'm standing next to him and holding the phone up.
Yeah, and then just like scale them smaller and larger with your fingers. Basically, you could make them the size of a skyscraper or like the size of a cup on a coffee table.
Now, I was in your studio today, and you guys weren't working, but you just had, you know, you had the camera set up and everything, and the computer happened to be on. So, like, it was somewhat capturing what we were doing. So it was not even like the full scale. But I was pretty amazed at how, you know, it was maybe a quarter second behind my movements. You know, like I would throw like fake punches or whatever, and my like quarter second, like almost a snap of a finger right behind it. When you're actually live doing it though, and having your engineers work on it in real time, I guess some of that latency that I see on there, you're pretty confident that's not going to be there, and you're able to capture most of that full 3D, so that if someone's watching two guys fight each other, maybe not UFC because they get on the ground and there's some complexity there, but like boxing, they're going to pretty much see the full thing that they would see on TV, but it's 3D.
Yeah. So it'll be like true real time. Sometimes there's like some legality behind broadcast because if somebody drops an F-bomb on live TV, you can cut it out really quick. There has to be a little bit of a lag, but on the technical side, no. Like we will be true real time.
Do they even cut that out anymore?
I hope not.
It's like, what are we doing?
Come on.
Yeah.
But yeah, and when you said nobody was working today in the studio when you were in there, it's actually kind of funny because being that everybody's remote now, we have teams working all over the world, and they use TeamViewer to work on our studio from like, I don't know, Canada, Australia, Europe, doesn't really matter. So they were working at the time, and sometimes I'll walk in, it'll be like 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll walk downstairs and grab a glass of water, and I'll look in there, and everything's on and running, but nobody's in there. So everybody's like working. It's 24/7. We have like these machines going at all
So they
times.
can turn on your machine from where they are?
Yeah, we just keep it running, and they're able to like access the code base remotely, which is nice.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
How do you find these guys? Like, how did you build? Because I don't care what you say. Like, we can talk about I know there's certain parts that was like confidential, but obviously, like there was a company before this that you guys had we'll call it an exit from, and leave it at that. So, like, you guys had a history, but you were still like 19 years old, 20 years old, something like that, when you're building this. Like, how do you get people? Forget where they are, like clearly very talented people who were able to build this. How do you attract them to your project when, frankly, you guys are just some dudes who landed on something really cool in a dorm room and, you know, moved out of that and into something new? Like, it wasn't more than that.
So it's easy to do if you say, hey, we're going to pay you X dollars to do it. What's really, truly impressive when they want to do it for free. And that's kind of where we find the bread and butter. You know you're onto something that's truly going to change the world, and you have the right people that are passionate about it, that's how you know you want to hire them, because I see what's happening. I'm an expert in the space, and I need to be a part of this because like I want my name on this in the next 30, 40 years when this was created. It's like saying I was a part of YouTube in, I don't know, 2008.
Yeah. Well, what about, like patent trolling and stuff? Because while you're building, it's not like you have patents on stuff. So you're sharing at least some of the information with these guys, I guess. Like what stopped them, you landing on the wrong guy and him going and doing it himself?
So you'd never have one guy working on everything. It's just, so that comes from like the genius side of it. My CTO is a guru. He's truly unbelievable. But
Baker?
Baker. He can strategically map out who needs to work on what to achieve this result with nobody knowing what anybody else is working on. So that's how you kind of keep it secret and keep it really, really special. So the patent process is one thing, which obviously everything's filed and we're okay, locked up tight on that.
Yeah.
But during like the build process, you just kind of have to keep everybody 1 degree removed from what you're truly going for.
But it was enough for people who were thinking about coming in to grasp where it was going and be like, oh, this is legit. Because like if they're not seeing the whole thing, who's to say you're not a used car salesman coming out like, oh, we got the magic stuff,
Yeah. You just have to sell them on the dream, I guess. And like I said, they're experts in the space, so they can see, and they'll be passionate enough about one single aspect of your entire pipeline, where that's enough for them. A lot of times they don't even mind knowing or caring about the whole big picture in the beginning. You just kind of focus on one thing that they truly love to work on, and then eventually you bring it all together, and then they step back and say, wow, this is what we contributed to.
And then obviously like now, you guys are what, like 4 years in, something like that?
Yeah.
4.5 years in. So now you can hire people and pay them, and these guys are a part of the team. But that's pretty cool that I didn't know that. You were basically recruiting people to be like, yo, you want to work on something fucking crazy on the side? And they're wherever they are, sitting in whatever country, they're like, yes, I do.
Yeah. And then it's really cool when it's like, okay, this is no longer a side project. I want to leave my job at one of the most powerful companies in the world and come work for a startup. It's like, holy shit, cool, man. Well, glad to have you. Yeah.
Now, what about like this scaling though? Because, you see a lot of companies that have a great idea, and then you see fewer companies who morph a great idea with actually creating the great thing, right? That's the hardest part. You have to have that. If you don't have something to sell, hard to build a company, but you guys covered that. So now it's like, I guess maybe the last 6 months, year, the thought more has been, okay, how do we expand from here where it's kind of like boots on the ground, all hands on deck, we're kind of feeling it out, to like, whoa, I know you can't talk about where you're at in funding, but like we're going out, we're getting some serious funding, this thing's going to the next level, and you can see at the end of a horizon something like an IPO. Like you clearly, you gotta add a lot of people. You gotta really scale up pretty quickly. Like what's the approach there?
So we saw the shift happen, and before we saw that shift, you could reach out to any VC, any investor in the world, and say, hey, this is my really cool idea. This is what I want to do. And if you're not quite there, they'll tell you, even though if you think you are, you 9 times out of 10 you're not. So you see like just dramatic shift in, okay, hey, I would like to have you involved. This is what we need. This is what we want. And they'll straight up tell you, hey, you're not quite there. Keep us posted. And like when you're ready, reach out. And that sucks because like you go through that for a while. And like you put every waking hour and all of your energy into one thing. And for somebody to say, you're not where you think you are, that kind of, it's tough to swallow. Yeah. But you just kind of, you strap up and like bear down again. And one day you're going to reach out to somebody else and they're going to say, holy shit, guys, you have something. Yeah. And that is when you see like that drastic, that pivot.
Do you worry about though? Because like you guys all live together. Like you're in there every day. You're touching everything that happens at the company. Maybe some of the engineers are working overnight on some stuff and things like that where you're not physically there. But like, every single thing that's going on. And I guess when you're at like 20 people or something like that, you can do that. When you go from 20 to 100, it's really hard to do that. Like, does that, I guess, like keeping that culture that's built it to here, is that a concern that like, okay, well now we're at that point where we're going to be hiring a lot of people, not just on the engineering side, but actually like on the go-to-market side and things like that. And now we're going to be bringing in a lot of people that maybe we don't even know. And we got to take a leap of faith to say, like, you know what, we're going to delegate this and delegate that and trust it's going to get done and get done the way we would do it.
Yeah, it's terrifying for all of us because like this has been our baby and been under our full control for a very long time. And you need to scale, obviously. But doing that, you need to scale with the right people. Luckily, I don't know why or what it is about us, but we've attracted some of like the perfect people, and they just fit the puzzle like very well. So we'll see how we can do that as we scale. So you're talking about like hiring 100 people. There's gonna be like a high churn rate there. You just need to make sure that you're not hiring the wrong people. And if you do, it will happen. Identify it quickly and get rid of them and bring somebody else in that is a better fit. So that's kind of an art around that.
Yeah.
We're very good with people, and like I take a psychological approach to a lot of things, and that's kind of like my thing. So I'm very excited to just be able to bring on that many people and kind of see how they fit in this crazy ecosystem that we've built.
Yeah. What like got you towards this? Because like you got into this young, and like there aren't. I mean, I can always speak for myself, but I can speak for a lot of other people even that ended up in tech. Like, it's not like when you're 15, you're always thinking like, you know what, I'm going to go change the world building, you know, some crazy algorithm or some crazy whatever. There are people who think like that, but a lot of people, it takes longer to get there. And like you just kind of made the jump young. Was that something that was always in the back of your head, or you just kind of like, you know, you and Anthony were close growing up and everything, and you're like, oh, this seems cool, like, let me check it out, and then you fell in love? Like, what's the process there?
Truly, I was never, like, unbelievably passionate about tech. I never really saw myself as, like, that's what I wanted to do, that's the career path I wanted to go down, but I was very passionate about kind of working for myself and kind of building things that are out of this world and very new and innovative. So my first business when I dropped out of college was in the renewable energy space. That was a lot of fun for a very long time, and it was like a very rapidly emerging market in New Jersey, at least. So took advantage of that and really jumped in, learned a ton, met a lot of great people, and truly had a great time building that. And
what were you building?
So installation and sales of residential and commercial solar systems. And then scaled it state to state. Scaled a pretty good team, actually. Some of the companies that spun out of my original business, they're still around and absolutely crushing it, which is really cool to see. And then from there, it was like, okay, like what's next? You know, like this is one thing, but like what's really out there? What's the big one? I guess just like the dreams and the ambition got a little bit larger, and the next natural stage was what's one of the most emerging markets out there. It's obviously tech. And then me and we've been close, just kind of like hustling all kinds of different ideas since, man, we're probably like 9-10 years old or so. And he was always like the natural guy to go with. There was like always a feeling there. Yeah.
Because he's like, the way he explained it to me is like he kind of fell into it a little bit. You know, like he wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to go to tech. And then he was always thinking about it from whatever he'd be doing, whether it be, I think he said he had a job like freshman year of college where he was like selling at a department store or something. And he would always be thinking about like, what's an easier way to do this? This is like stupid. And so then it kind of translated, because tech is all about like saving time and making convenience and something like wild that, you know, you put in a human's life. And it just kind of translated straight to tech. So it sounds like it was probably, if I'm hearing this correctly, pretty similar for you in that you did want to work for yourself and like build something. But then you're also like, okay, what can I do to make something easier?
Exactly. And then it comes down to like, who do you want to build it with? Because your team is truly everything. Without the proper team, we would have been dead 4 years ago. We would have hardly got this thing off the ground. But there's like a sense of resilience, because like it's not always great. There's a lot of like hard times that go into it. And having the people that are willing to like, okay, no matter what, there's not even a thought. We're going to get through this and we're going to get to our end goal. We'll see what hoops we have to jump through without like that support system and like that team behind you. It's going to be tough to do.
You also got, and I don't know if lucky is the word, but you're doing this with a childhood friend, and then Baker, I think, was a childhood friend of Anthony's, right? But you didn't, is that right? Correct. You didn't know Baker? Okay. Yeah. So, like, he's got both of his childhood friends in there and everything. And, like, people are always saying, like, scary when you go into business with like friends, and then especially you create something where you all move in together and you're building a company. But you guys seem to have like such a yin yang and yang or whatever, you know, on the three of you. Did you know that kind of when you went in, or is that something that after a while you're like, oh shit, that kind of worked by accident?
Yeah, it's like we're such a cliche.
Yeah,
the odds are against you in that sense. But I think the key is just balance. You know, like we are truly like working day to day, every single day.
Gotcha.
Start over.
No, you're good. You're good. Just pulling in the mic on you.
Yeah, like truly balance is the key in this. Typically, we work until 2:00 in the morning most nights. Whenever we're feeling it, you shoot each other texts like, "Hey, are you tired yet? No, can't. Too many things on my mind. Okay, let's run through this. Let's like do something." And also, so for me, it's like Sundays I take kind of for myself, and I didn't for a very long time. And you just started to get burnt out, and you get too close to things. You don't have like much perspective on the outside world, and then you got to think about like, what am I actually building for? And you're not connected with the outside. So what I started doing, it was a little while ago. So I try to do, I did this thing where I try to learn something new every single Sunday. And since I started doing that, everything has become a bit easier. So it's kind of like a mile wide, inch deep mindset. So learn a little bit about a lot of things and become much more well-rounded.
Like what kinds of things?
So when I first started it was just like reading a different book, right? And and then you start getting bored. You start pounding through books. It's like, okay, I'm learning a lot there. That's great. And then, so I've been like a car guy my whole life, right? So I would work on either a different car or a different piece of a vehicle every Sunday for a little while. And I rebuilt, me and a couple of my friends have like rebuilt a number of really cool vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I learned how to play the guitar. Baker actually taught me. It was like that became more than every Sunday. Just started learning new things. And then recently started working on planes with one of my friends, Maurice.
You're working on planes?
Yeah. Just like, we're not very like good at it yet, but we do a ton of diligence, and like we're mechanically inclined. So like we know how to work.
You're talking about that like you got a fucking plane parked outside. What do you mean you're working on, where do you go work on planes? Just like the airport?
Just like an old one. Yeah. Just like old, like an old
You're like, just
plane.
take it up and fly it too?
No. I can't fly. Man. Eventually, that's the goal. My dream, I want to have like a seaplane and live down in the Florida Keys and like sick. Work out of Miami, and I'll just take the seaplane up and down. Forget the traffic.
So you got into planes.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Yeah.
Was that like a natural progression from cars? You're just like, you saw under the hood, you understood stuff. You're like, I wonder how to fly.
They're unbelievably similar and mechanically a bit more simplistic. But I know that sounds kind of crazy if you don't understand like the aerodynamic behind it. But they're kind of like simple objects.
How so? It seems like, because, to like the layman, looking at it, layman, whatever you say, like, it seems like there's a million moving things that if one of them goes wrong, we're all fucked.
There's much less resistance, and like, what do you really have to worry about up there? With cars, like if you have a car from the 80s, it's like, holy shit, you have a classic, right? Yeah. Where like most planes are from the 50s and 60s and still flying, and it's a very common thing.
Really?
Yeah, for sure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, even though like the big Boeing planes that you fly on every day, they're all from like 80s, 90s. And they seem like
I would believe the 90s.
Yeah, depending what airline.
80s, yeah. Well, Spirit's from fucking 40s. Yeah. I mean, you got like duct tape on the goddamn wings. Hey. But that is, when you actually think about that, though, like I totally believe the 90s. But now you concept it in your head and you're like, oh my God, it's 2021.
Long time ago.
Can you imagine driving a car that you've driven for like every day for like the last 23 years? That's not like a rebuilt classic. That's like, this is like a crime, driving this thing around.
It's actually kind of funny. I have, I guess one of my cars is 21 years old. The other one is 30 years old.
Holy shit.
Still driving every day. My dad drives one of them every single day of his life as a daily.
How many miles are on those things?
I mean, they've been rebuilt a couple times, naturally.
Okay.
But yeah.
Okay. See, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like that, and you see the guys, like, especially with the classic cars, but you see like the 67 Mustang or 65 Mustang. Some of those, like, they're more common ones that you may see because guys rebuild the engine.
Totally.
Those things where the outside was built so beautifully, like, and I know very little about like how to actually build the engine of a car, but my understanding from people I knew who did it is that it was relatively easy on cars like that if you knew what you were doing and actually learned it to be able to replace that engine and create something new in there and then keep the entire outside intact.
Yeah, it's as long as you have a decent donor to start with, the process is a little bit easier. And the only thing, it's difficult in the tri-state area because there's like a lot of rust. You have rough winters. The road salt kind of decays them. But if you can get a decent donor vehicle from a warmer state, they'll last forever as long as like they're taken care of to some degree.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
It's like I think about, like, I'll see a car. I mean, my last car, R.I.P., died on Garden State Parkway up in North Jersey. Caught on fire.
No way.
Yeah.
You were one of those guys?
Oh, yeah.
No way.
Oh, it was interesting. Wow. Everyone looks at you funny, and they're like, "Are you okay?" My car's like fucking on fire.
Like, I don't know.
I'm like, you know what? I guess it was like 13 years old. That's just what happens. So like the idea of, I guess that one had like 200-some thousand miles. It had a lot of miles on it, but I just figure it gets to like 12, 13 years old. It's like a ticking time bomb. Like,
it's just a proper cremation. It's okay.
Yeah. So why don't more people be like, yeah, we just replace the engine and cost you $2,000 rather than buy a fucking new car for maybe not $2,000, but $3-4,000, something like that, rather than buy a new car for $35,000.
You're absolutely right. Now, the emerging EV market, the electric vehicles, that's going to be a whole new thing.
What do you think of that? Like, where are we in your mind, and like, how real is it that we're not going to have gas cars on the road in like 10 years?
Oh yeah, 100%. I strongly agree. So much so that like my next venture, when I just kind of like passion project, kind of want to like hang out and do things I really love, I'm probably going to start a shop that converts gas cars to electric, mainly because that's going to be the way of the future. It's going to be very rare to see gas vehicles. Especially if, like, think about resources in general. Well, I come from the renewable energy business. So I look at solar and say, okay, that's the way of the future. As long as you can find a way to manufacture the panels in an efficient manner and, like, a green manner.
Can we take a sidebar on that real fast?
Yeah.
I want to ask about that.
Sure.
Because treat me like I know nothing, because I know next to nothing on solar. I know very basics. And one of the things I've heard there is that with solar energy, one of the misconceptions is that you need the sun actually shining on it at all times, but certainly helps. But it's also the amount of power, and I'm probably using the wrong term, that it provides that is not able to effectively power something like a car to guarantee that you're going to get 300 miles to an engine, or 300 miles to one drive without filling it, versus what gas or even electric now will do. Is that accurate, or like, is it improving? Where we stand there?
So it's definitely improving right now. So you see like the Tesla shingles, they came out a long time ago. Great concept, but it only powers like 30% of your home. So you can't really use them in Jersey because utility bills are too high. In wintertime, you run your AC, that kind of thing. But like the actual panels, if you fill your roof, like it'll run your entire house. So the barrier right now is it's still tied to the grid. So you can't really go fully off grid. You still have to be tied to like PSE&G or Atlantic City Electric, whatever your utility is. Once majority of the population has like the battery installed in their home and they're completely like self-sufficient, and you have an electric car, electric house, everything is solar powered. That's when I think it's going to like really make that transition.
Does that completely save cost too? Because you like install the solar panel, and then what the hell else do you even pay for?
It's pretty much the upfront cost. Well, it depends if you're leasing it or you're owning it yourself. It doesn't really make. I wouldn't lease it, but if it was up to me, I would own my own, and it's just that initial investment of installation and the panels. And then from there, you just have like free electricity. You have a little bit of maintenance, but they're built pretty well. It's not much.
So like, let's say solid house, 3,000 square feet, something like that. Regular kind of roof. What expense am I looking at right now, ballpark, if I wanted to solar panel the whole roof? I'm kind of putting you on the spot there, sorry. But
yeah, I mean, it's been a while. I don't know what like current market rate for panels is, but probably somewhere around 30-ish thousand. 30 to 50K, depending on like your utility, like your electricity consumption.
That's about, I would have guessed about like 40, 50K.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not like you're buying a second home there, but it's a big investment. And the trade-off is that if it's, and they're not right now yet, but if it becomes sufficient enough in capture to power your entire home That's like saying, okay, well, I'm never going to have it. First of all, I build an asset on the house that I get to work into the price. And secondly, I'm never going to pay an electricity bill now.
Right.
And how close are we? I don't even know if you said this. I was trying to pay attention to all of it. But how close are we to those panels being able to do that on a house that puts them on the entire roof?
And like cover all of your electric?
Yeah.
Oh, we're there. But you're still tied to the grid, so they don't allow you to take 100% of the electricity. The big man.
I was going to say, that seems like a fucking scam.
There you go.
So they make you...
I mean, they would go out of business very quickly if that was the case.
What about the Amish? Is it Amish or Amish? I say it both ways.
They're doing just fine.
But they don't have to get the electricity.
No.
So pretty much, if you put solar panels on your home, the government knows about it. And if you're not paying an electricity bill, they're coming for you.
I don't know if they would really come for you. I think one of the cool things is you can sell the electricity that you produce. And so there's a whole market for it. So it's called like a SREC, Solar Renewable Energy Credit. And like you can sell it state to state. So if there's another state that's in need, the price of SRECs goes up in your current demographic or geographic location. And you can sell it to other states just like you're selling a Bitcoin or any stock or anything like that. There's like a whole market for it.
Okay, I'm a little lost. What am I selling?
So you produce...
If I'm New Jersey.
You produce energy, right?
Yeah.
You collect that energy.
With solar panels.
Yeah. There's a need for energy in another state, right? Supply, demand. Here you go. Here's some of the electricity that I produced from New Jersey. It comes into a credit. Think of it as a coin.
That I didn't use.
Yeah. You didn't use it. And utility company in Arizona, if they're in need... So, okay, the rate's a little bit higher, demand's higher, I'll pay a premium for it, and they'll buy the energy from you.
But then the energy has to be transported there.
Through the grid, that's why you're still grid tied. So it's the whole, it goes into the lines.
So essentially it's like a game of musical chairs a little bit.
You're just moving energy around state to state. But
so once all the states buy in, there's no end. Once you get to like 40 states, lights out, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess the rate of each SREC or coin would drop.
What about like at night though and stuff? I mentioned this a little bit, but that's where I get a little hazy. I've heard that like even though the sun's down, there's some sort of like UV energy or whatever that'll still power it. Is it not powerful enough to like guarantee my TV is going to stay on?
So that's why you're still grid tied too, because like okay, if it's nighttime, I produce enough during the day, it goes somewhere and it's being stored or distributed elsewhere, but you can still, at nighttime, you can still get your power from the grid, or if you have the batteries installed all day, you're collecting the solar rays, and it goes into the battery, and it stores it in that battery in your basement, and then at nighttime, the power that you consumed or produced all day goes into your battery, and then you can just run your house on it pretty much.
It's like saving up something.
Yeah,
like a piggy bank almost.
It's a big piggy bank.
Every day of electricity, and then you go into the piggy bank at night depending on how much you use.
Yeah, it's cool.
Wow. So we sidebarred that off cars though, because you were talking about inside of 10 years from now or something like that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have all electric cars on the road. One of the things that blew my mind there is you're talking about doing a business at some point, like it's a passion project, where you take gas cars and make them electric cars. Do you, like, I guess it is possible. You just rip out the entire engine and just stick a voltage whatever in there?
It's actually like relatively simple as long as you can like understand the electronic part of it, but it's just a couple batteries. You rip your engine out and you don't need all the coolant, you don't need all the crazy lines, you don't need the transmission. It just goes battery on each axle and let it rip.
So these cars are, and now I'm getting naive about my car knowledge.
Yeah.
These gas cars are set up such that you're just able to hook in electricity to where, certain belts and tubes used to be?
Yeah, I mean, you'd still need like your AC, air conditioning. So you would just like tie that. You would probably leave that, but everything else you could pretty much get rid of and go electric motor, which is kind of cool. There's some guys that do it now. I've seen some people do like old Plymouths and from like the 60s, 70s, rip out everything and throw like a Tesla motor in it, and it's like pretty fucking cool if you ask me.
Well, that's the other thing. You can just buy Tesla parts?
Yeah.
Like that? I didn't even know that.
And think about it in like 5-10 years, but Tesla's relatively new. You don't find many of them with over 200,000 miles on them, right? So like...
Does that even matter?
No. But eventually there's going to be parts and like donor vehicles laying all over the place. You can go to a scrapyard and be like, hey, I need a Tesla. Here you go. We got 300 of them. You grab the parts you need.
Are there any, because I know a fair amount about Tesla, obviously, because they were the big guys leading the space behind Elon and everything. But any of these other companies like Ford, I know they've really fucked around with electric vehicles. And then I think Mercedes has started to do some work there. And I think a lot of them have at least gone to start that or create it. Like, are they anywhere near where Tesla is?
So Tesla has the advantage right now on the autonomous driving and a lot of the software-driven things, but mechanically, I mean, there's not really anything super special there. If I'm being honest, I probably wouldn't buy a Tesla. I don't know if I ever will. I will because I'm a fan of Elon, but I think they're going to depreciate rapidly. Not Tesla as a company, but the vehicles that they produced already that are already being used day to day. They're very cool now. They're very different and unique now. But once every other company is getting involved and there's going to be millions of them on the road, they're not going to stick out as much as they do currently.
Do you think part of that is the fact that they're relatively, minus the computer program, they're relatively simple inside? Whereas, let me give like the explanation of what I mean. You know, somebody buys a Mercedes, let's use a more mainstream one rather than like a Rolls Royce or something ridiculous. Someone buys a Mercedes over a Honda because in the Honda, you know, maybe it's not nice leather seats made of whatever fucking animal is the best one. I don't know. And it's not, you know, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles that a Mercedes does. And then the engine itself isn't as great. But with a Tesla, first of all, it seems like the the fucking box is very replicable. I don't know if that's a word, but we'll go with it. And then you have the car itself minus the computer right there. The computer is also replicable. And then the rest of it is not like special in your mind.
Agreed. Yes. So, I mean, think about it now. You have Audi, Mercedes, BMW. They run the luxury market, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Honda and Toyota. Most of them are owned by the same company, but they just have different tiers. I don't know if Tesla has the ability to kind of like, I guess, own every single one of those classes. So like if you look at Audi right now, they're creating electric vehicles. They perform one-to-one with Tesla for the most part, but they're beautiful. Like that has creature comforts, has everything you need in a car and everything and more that I would ever ask for. So I think like those kind of adaptations and innovations from the existing motor companies, I think they're going to take over. Also, like Rivian. I think Rivian's one of the...
I actually don't know that.
Rivian, yeah. So they've been around. Yeah, look them up. They're super cool. I actually saw some of their vehicles at CES last year in Vegas, which was really cool to see. So they landed a deal with Amazon Amazon's going to take the chassis of all Rivian cars and trucks and put them in all their delivery vehicles. So they'll be 100%
one in the corner
electric.
of the screen for people watching. But yeah keep going.
But yeah, that's probably they've been on my radar for a while now. They're probably going to hopefully they IPO later this year. I'm not sure if it got pushed back or not. I'm not super sure, but
yeah. See, like I'm looking at their trucks right here,
Rivian
and
trucks are cool.
They're cool. They're sleek. They look a little different, but it looks like your new era tech take on like a Ford F-150 or something.
Exactly.
Whereas like, and I don't know if that's exactly like how that compares when you look at like the Cybertruck, which looks like it's out of fucking, you know, iRobot, you know. It's right, like so I don't know if people are going to look for what was with like a nice twinge on it or whatever, which I guess they kind of do with the cars right now, but I'm talking about when this market takes over versus, you know, something that looks familiar and it's just like souped up. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, the way I look at it is like all these companies have been competing for years, right? They're going to continue to. They're just going to change like the drivetrain. And they're still going to compete. The ones that are running markets right now, so like the higher end luxury vehicles, they're probably going to continue to run those markets when electric comes around because it's going to be very similar technology.
Well, the other thing we're missing here is that this is like slang a lot, but it's very true. Like people use it in passing and just say this and don't think about it, but it's really hard to run a car company.
Oh man, I wouldn't do it.
Your margins are fucking terrible. You know, it's like when you think about it, even like a dealership model, And the number of hoops they got to go through to, you know, it's not like buying a goddamn, even like a phone, you know, it's like someone's making a big investment coming in there relative to them, whatever they're shopping for. Like, you know, a guy might sell a $130,000 Mercedes and make, you know, profit of like $3,000, maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and then they're also, a lot of them are set up such that they don't profit at all. In fact, they lose money on the sale, and they're betting on the lifetime like service. So that motherfucker better never move from here or better live close. And then you think about like how fast Tesla's scaled and everything. It's kind of wild, and it's why it's scary that, you know, it's Elon running it, but he's even said this before. He's like, don't start a car company. Like, they haven't made money because the expense of what they're doing also involves creating adoption. You know, they got to set up all these charging stations everywhere, which, like, where even are they with that?
I mean, so you can travel, like, cross country and not have a problem with charging your Tesla. Like, you could do it. It's on every interstate in most towns. I think there's a huge market there. For me, so natural progression, as you see electric vehicles being adopted, gas stations are going to start closing. They need to be installed or rebuilt and get rid of the gas pumps and put electric chargers in. I think it'd be really cool to have like a whole a solar array on top of your gas station, like on a bunch of land, and put chargers in, and you essentially become the gas stations of the world. I think that would be really cool to get involved with. I see like a huge opportunity there.
And that would be a different monetization too, because you would be like, let's say you're the, well, we can't call them a gas station. You're the electric station there.
Yeah.
You paid to put all those panels in, and you're going to do way more than one home because you got a lot of traffic coming through there. So maybe you're paying, let's fast forward 10 years, you're paying $1 million, or you're paying like 5 Bitcoins for it or something.
There you
right? You know, so you invest one-time costs in that, but in order to use it, people get a utility and they get like a flat rate. So instead of like $3 a gallon or $2 a gallon, whatever, now it's like, oh, you want to use the Tesla station, it's like paying $2 for you know,
volt.
yes, like buying chips or something.
Literally.
You know, is that the model they're looking at?
Yeah, I don't know firsthand, but I would imagine that's what they're going for. Yeah.
It's just like when I talk with people like you, it's crazy how close we are to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it's not far-fetched.
You know?
No.
And like, even if you had talked, like, what would you say to yourself from, if you could talk to yourself from December 2019 and tell your past self in December 2019 where we are now, even with COVID, which is a shocker, right? No one saw that coming. But even tell him that, which he'd be shocked at. Would you have thought we're like this far where people are adopting the remote like this, and then also looking at, oh yeah, like saying something offhand, like, yeah, you know, I think we could be all electric in 10 years. Like, is that the speed you were looking at then, or did COVID just move everything up 5, 10, 15 years?
I don't want to like sound like that asshole, but I kind of like, I saw this. Mainly because I've been like in that space for a while now, naturally. I would say COVID accelerated it maybe a year or two at most. I don't think it's like super drastic. Got people much more comfortable, and the adoption sped up, I'd say, a couple years. But in general, like we're pretty on par here. I mean, if you look at it, like these companies have been building this for years and years and years. They saw it coming, you know? It's just like going to market a little bit faster than everybody anticipated.
And it kind of, it sped up some things again that slowed down, because the key to any of this is people got to be ready to like look for it. You know, you can go create the greatest innovation, but like if people are like, what the fuck is that? Yeah. You know, then it gets put on ice. And that's kind of, I mean, to loop it back around, that's kind of what happened a little bit with your space, not what you guys built, because that wasn't built yet. But when you look at, back to the Pokemon Go example, I remember there were some, I think I said this to Anthony when he was in here, there were a couple companies I was aware of. One of them, I didn't know the people there, but my boss at the time did and was very close with them. They were already looking at doing that virtual world with advertising, right? So whether it be the billboards you pass, and, you know, there'd be some kind of like virtual experience there, which would require a passenger, because hopefully people aren't holding their fucking phone up while they're driving. That could be a crazy one. But more importantly, that whole mall concept, like they were looking at, okay, how do we they didn't get to the tech you did, but they were thinking about that. And they were like, oh, someone's getting to this inside of like a year. And I guess technically you guys kind of did, because that was probably like 2017. But it's not like their thinking was, oh, this will happen right when we get to it. It'll happen. But it's a lot. It's one thing to have like a Pokemon Go game. You can turn that off. But it's like, oh, I'm going to do all my shopping now in a virtual mall. That, that's some movie shit.
I would like to see or talk to the guys at Niantic that built Pokemon Go and ask if they actually anticipated that kind of adoption from it. Or was this something that, oh, I think this would be really cool to do, let's try it? Or if it was like, this is going to be the biggest thing that the world's ever seen. I would love to know if like they anticipated that and saw it, or they kind of, wow, what just happened,
Is that company Niantic? I don't know much. I've heard the name. I don't know much about them. Is that like the main thing they've done, or have they done other things too that I would know of?
They've acquired a lot of companies in the space. You'll hear a lot more about them, I would imagine, in the next couple of years, unless they want to stay really stealthy. But they're like everyday consumer probably wouldn't know who they are. Look it up after this. You'll find some stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like the one on the forefront of like all this kind of technology.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, it's a lot to handle. Like thinking about it, it stresses me out because now like I see it, like what you guys are doing, and like it's cool. Me and Chaz are in there fucking like playing around with ourselves, and then I leave the house and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, holy fuck, man! Like, am I gonna be doing this, or are you gonna be floating? Like, and this is a podcast. Like, who gives a shit? Like in real life, though,
It's tough because like I struggled with this for quite some time. And I looked at it, I was like, what we're building is either, yes, it's really cool, but what's it really doing to the world? Like what's the actual impact that's going to happen with this? So I like to use like Kevin Systrom as an example. So,
Instagram guy,
yeah,
right?
Founder of Instagram. Did he when he was building Instagram, do you really think it would have affected the world and everybody's day-to-day life at the scale that it did? Probably not. You can run like entire businesses. People quit their jobs and are like full-time on Instagram, either if it's like integrating e-commerce or just being influencers. Mm-hmm. Do you really think his plan was to change the world to that degree? I'm going to say no. And I think about the same thing, and one scares the hell out of me. What we're building, once it gets into the hands of everybody in the world, it's out of your control at that point, right? It's either going to be, some of it's going to be really good, some of it might be bad. I don't know if it's going to be malicious, but it's going to change social interaction as a whole. But on the flip side of that, I see it diminishing rapidly already. Like, go on a plane, go into a gym, and see if there's one person having like a conversation, or if in between reps they're looking at their phone and just buried in their phone. They're just diminishing social interaction as a whole. Where if you can bring like a sense of intimacy back, which is like that was our whole goal in this, we need to bring intimacy into the digital world, then I think it's kind of saving it in a way too, which is an interesting way to think about it.
That is a very interesting way to think about it. I sit up at night thinking about this. It's not, I'm not I'm just a guy who happens to like have a little bit of a front row seat, a little more than other people right now. And like, I think about it because, and like some of the conversations we've had off camera is like when you guys first came up with this, the three of you, I remember asking you guys this back in like maybe January when I was over your place for the first time. Like, do you guys think about the downside of this? And you all looked at each other and like deadpan every day. And I think the way you explained it after that was, after a while, you have to get used to that. And you have to know someone's going to build this, right? And there's a level to which it's going to get to a point, no matter who you are, good, bad, and different, it's going to be out of your hands, and people are going to use it. But what I sit up at night about thinking is when that happens, and when you start to create or have the ability to create things that suddenly, I guess, blur the lines between the real world and what's not. And to put an exact example on that, like one I think about a lot, and they're different. So first one, you guys are going to be able to bring back, air quotes there, very famous people who have been dead, maybe for a while, who are important to a lot of people, right? Because they laughed at them or love their content or love whatever they're singing, whatever it was. you're going to be able to give that quote-unquote 6 degrees of freedom to put like a Whitney Houston in the middle of someone's house using video of her from her whole life, practically, because she was all on video. She was, from the newer era in that way. Like, we captured all that. And literally recreate, in fact, even the vocals, like, recreate all that, which that part's easy, but then have it so it's like, oh my God, Whitney Houston's fucking singing to me. Now, the second example, and this is the one that really gives me pause, is like, imagine you're a father and you lost your 9-year-old son to cancer. And that was 15 years ago. But there's a video of you and your son having a catch when he was 6. And I think about 4 or 5 years from now, I'll even give you a buffer and say like, yo, when you guys are really, like, you can get down to every little birth defect. You can put that father on demand, that video of him having a catch with his son, and he could play it on demand in front of him in his living room. That is, I don't care what you say, that is different than just watching a 2D video, because when it's 3D right there and he can get up and walk, and when we have the hardware to do it and he's not just using a phone, he can get up and walk around him, that can fuck with your head.
Yeah, that's something I think about a whole lot, and it just comes down to like the efficacy of everything, and like it's in whose hands now, because it's out of yours, and what are they doing with it. So it's funny you bring that up, and it's one thing that I think could be really, really special, but a bit scary. It's almost like a post-mortem effect. We talked to a couple of people at hospitals when we were kind of exploring different use cases for the tech, right? And one thing that we came across was, think about like terminally ill patients, right? Or if it's like a mother and she knows she's going to die after she has her kid right away, you can capture and have her like give like a speech, or say, hey, you're going through puberty now, this is your first boyfriend, this is what you need to do, and like things like that. And it's like this, you don't want to mess with that stuff, but then like naturally somebody's going to do that. So like something that I wanted to do is like, so my grandmother's getting old, right? I thought it would be I haven't done it yet, but I would like to. I'm just a little scared of it. I want to capture her, have her say something to like my grandkids, because she's probably not going to meet them. And in 20 years from now, play that, and like there's like a full 3D representation of my grandmother. But something that we've also explored was like, say you had a tiny desk of, you've seen the tiny desk of Mac Miller, right?
Yeah. Oh my God.
Imagine bringing Mac Miller back to life and having that tiny desk kind of thing.
That's the first example, dude.
Come on.
Yeah, like Whitney Houston, Mac Miller, like all these people, and like recreating the famous moments too.
Yeah.
Like people lost their fucking mind when Pac came out of Coachella in 2012, and it was an illusion.
Yeah. And
I put up a video, because I talked about that with Anthony. I put up a quick TikTok a couple months ago on that, and there was 1 or 2 people, maybe it was at least 1, maybe 2, who were there, and they said, when you were there, you could tell. Like none of it, like it looked, when we saw it on camera afterwards, it looked like a little bit real, but you were there, you're like, oh, that's just like it's just like a flash screen. But what you're talking about is like depth and seeing that. And it's...
So, to stop you there, like think about like haptics.
I keep telling you this, but sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm a nudge.
No, you're good.
I gotta watch the volume here, because I want to make sure you're coming in and booming for people.
Yeah. So think about like when you integrate haptics with this kind of technology. So like I can build a haptic t-shirt or haptic gloves. So
what do you mean haptic?
I guess to explain it, like little vibrations that you can build into clothing to make it feel. So like if we shook hands right now, I would feel with a virtual object that I interacted with it and touched it, and it would feel real. So you can integrate things. This is in the future, but there's a direct path. It's happening. It's going to happen.
Wait.
Not us, but other company.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But still, even if it's not you, like you're working on the visual end,
Mm-hmm.
you're telling me that like I'm actually going to physically feel like I shook someone's hand.
Yeah, you could. So you can get like a haptic t-shirt, and if I hugged like this virtual object, this digital object, it would feel like I'm actually hugging like a real thing. Have you ever used like an Oculus or like a VR?
Actually, no. I have not.
We just got one. I used it, to be honest, for the first time a couple weeks ago. Absolutely blew my mind. It was nuts.
So what did you do in there? Like where were you?
I was on the home screen, to be honest, and that alone just kind of like piqued all of my curiosity.
What do you mean home screen? And there's like this home screen
And there's like this home screen where like it kind of like maps your whole house, and then you can like you can get lost in like this weird digital world, and I got terrified of it. Like really, really did.
So it creates experiences in your house, though.
Yeah, you can
that
like
aren't there.
place objects into your own home. So you think about like what we just spoke about and integrating haptic with it. You can like live in this virtual environment and kind of feel okay with it and stay there for a good bit of time. It's kind of strange to think about, but
it's like the Matrix.
Yeah.
Like in real, like, and they're lying in the box or whatever the fuck it was, but life imitates art. You know, like the, you know, you saw the beginning of COVID, but not for nothing, I had some huge I Am Legend vibes in there. Like there's some weird shit that happens, which by the way, I always say this. If some like blonde lady comes on TV in the next couple of years and says she cured cancer, humanity needs to go kill her before anything happens. I'm sorry, lady, but like I've seen that movie. It happened in I Am Legend. We're not doing fucking zombies. Anyway.
I watched that movie like 2 weeks ago.
Oh my God. Yeah, no. First of all, dog dies in the movie. That's a hard no-go. That's a hard no-go. Spoiler alert. Sorry. And then, you know, I'm not serious, but still, like, don't come out with a cure to cancer if you're blonde. Just saying. Nothing against you. Just saying. Side note. But you're talking about these speeches or like having a dying mom talk to her kids on their wedding day or something, which is crazy to think about. But the emotion of it, are you familiar at all with this? It's some kind of filter. I think it's outside. There's two. One of them I think is outside TikTok, where it takes a picture and it'll take, you know, it could be a picture from 30 years ago, and it's maybe your great-grandmother and great-grandfather, and it will very slightly, in a way that makes them look like a zombie, move their face. Like, if you're listening and not watching, I'm barely moving my face, like a little bit left and right. And when people watch this, when like the kid shows their dead grandparents to their parents, and their face is literally just moving like that in a picture, they cry, and it's real. Like, they cry, they lose their minds. The other one is, and this is a TikTok filter of some sort, someone holds their hand over their face. And at the end of holding their hand, it's like a 10-second countdown or something. When they remove it, their face, based on a picture that they uploaded, now looks like a dead relative or a dead friend or something like that. And you see people react to this. They're not kidding. They're fucking streaming and down their face because it's like so emotional to see that reality like staring back at you. That is so simple and bullshit compared to what you're talking about.
You see it happening already.
Yes. Yeah. And so now I'm thinking about, that's basically like, I don't even have a good example to think off the top of my head, but that is basically like the first piece of plywood on a house you're going to build.
Yeah. They're
crying at the plywood. Imagine when they're looking at the fucking house.
Go back to the evolution.
Yeah, man.
See what's about to happen.
I don't know how that doesn't like, I mean, I know you guys still think about it, like you said, every day, but I don't know how that doesn't like blow your fucking mind every day.
Yeah. And then parts of you are like, do I want to be around to see that happen? Or like, are we ready to let somebody else handle it?
That's scary though, too.
Yeah, for sure. That's why I want to like stay in control, because you can control what everybody's doing with it if it's yours, you know?
And you'd like, you know...
It's like an obligation.
Yeah, you never want to play God, right? No one... And some people do that. And that's, you know...
Some people love that.
Some people love that.
Yeah,
it's a power thing.
Terrifying.
But there is like that positive competition in your head, like, hey, I know that my vision for this is like the morally, potentially among the best, right? And I don't know that the next person will be. Mm-hmm. So like in your head, you are judging your own morals in that way. That's not something that a lot of us can relate to, because we don't, you know, people don't fucking create a compression algorithm like that and create 3D objects, you know? And there's other examples of similar types of tech or ideas in tech. But like to the average person like me, you know, I don't know how I'd handle that at the age of 40 with a full family, let alone fucking 24, 25 years old. What are you, 25, 26?
Just turned 25.
Okay. Yeah. 25 years old. Been thinking about this for the last 3 years at least.
Yeah. It's heavy.
It's heavy as shit, man.
Yeah.
You seem like kind of, I don't know. All three of you seem this way. You seem, I don't know if the term is at peace with it, but just like, it is what it is.
We've come to terms with it, you know?
Yeah, people listening right now are like, fuck, man, holy shit.
By the way, are we not going to discuss the haircut? Because you pulled up to my house today, and I got like heavy Johnny Depp from Blow vibes.
Yeah, man, it came. I haven't put it on camera yet. I got hat head, but it came off like a month and a half ago.
Yeah.
So
yeah, like Blow's one of my favorite movies, and you pulled up with the glasses on today. I was like, holy shit, it's Johnny.
You know what? That's the Versace shades, man.
Hell yeah.
I gotta give a shout out to the Versace. They really do their thing.
Brand deal.
Dude, brand deal all day. I will pay you. I will pay you to sponsor this. Anyway, not really. But, you know, I realized that actually when I was putting those on, it's funny you say that. I'm like, shit.
You have them up here? You got to put them on.
No, they're downstairs.
Oh,
Fuck.
buddy.
But they were sitting on here for a couple podcasts because I was actually outside before. But I've worn them like 6 times in the last year. I used to wear those fuckers every single day of my life. You know, it's like... Because that's the other thing. We're talking about all this tech and all this innovation. We've mentioned COVID, but, you know, it changed reality on everything. You know, like day to day. Like, I never thought about how often I go outside, you know? And now I think about that. Like, I haven't been outside today. I'm gonna go for an hour walk.
And you're okay with it.
That's the weird thing.
That's the scary part.
I think, you know what, though? And you definitely can speak to this because you've been building something for years. But, like, I'm building something right now, right?
In grind mode.
Exactly. So it's like I consider myself really lucky to have that because then I don't have time for, like, the distractions as much for shit that's going on. Whereas, like, let's take a lot of my friends who have great jobs and, like, work at big companies and stuff. They haven't worked nearly as much over the last year and a half, naturally, right? There's a lot of time on their hands, and then they can't go fill that time. I don't know how I'd handle that.
Look at their screen time. Would love to see it.
Would love to see it, yeah. I mean, like, screen time, I think, is like, it's like an expectation that you're going to be on there for like 7-8 hours now.
Probably, yeah, for sure.
It's nuts. I mean, I've always had my thing, I don't know, I'm OCD. I have the no lock screen, so I can never check my screen time. Because I will sit my phone like on a charger,
open.
Maybe not use it. I'm good. I trained myself to not use it for 6-8 hours at a time last summer. So now I can leave it next to me, and I know I'm pretty much not going to use it. But like, it's technically on the whole time. So I don't even know how much I use it. But you made the point a few minutes ago. Like, you go everywhere, and like, people are fucking in it. And so maybe a good part of your technology is that. I think you actually said this. I don't know if I remember correctly. But you guys can kind of force people to have to interface a little bit because they're using the tech, but they're seeing the other person. And then eventually they're not using the tech. The other person's right there.
It knocks down one of those barriers. So the analogy I like to use is I spoke with my my cousin. We were getting sushi the other day, and we were talking about Teslas and like everybody texting and driving. It's terrifying, and like everybody's crashing and that kind of thing. And she said, the problem is not the phones and the phone usage of the humans. The problem is with the vehicles not driving themselves. That's kind of like a interesting take. It's like people are never going to stop using their phones. They're too addicted. They're not going to like to put them down when they're driving. I was texting and driving on my way here. I'm guilty of it. We all are. It all happens.
Do cops even pull people over anymore for that?
Shit, they're doing it too. You ever like see one on the side of the road? It's like you're on your phone.
Bro, they're not on a phone. They're on a laptop.
Yeah.
They gotta. You ever see the cops like driving like this and their fucking fingers are going like this into a laptop? It's like, and we're getting pulled over for texting and driving. Yeah, she's right about that.
That's not the problem. The problem is the cars. People aren't going to change. People are who they are. Cars need to change to adapt to the new lifestyle of people.
Yeah. It's funny you bring that up because I had one of my videos that people were arguing over on TikTok was from an earlier podcast and it was on the self-driving cars. And I was using it as a hypothetical. I was trying to compare. Oh, let's sorry, buddy. Let's get you a little refill here.
Good. Oh, you got the ice bucket in there.
Yeah. But I was using a hypothetical to try to compare like the equality of deaths, right? So I was saying like if we had 50% self-driving cars on the road right now and 50% human-driven cars, and there were 10 obviously there's way more than this, but there were 10 human deaths on a given night versus one self-driving death. The news story is the self-driving death, and they're going to demonize it. And they're not looking at it apples to apples. The thing is, though, this makes me think about it because you bring that up. The technology for self-driving cars is, to my understanding, it's there.
Yeah.
They just need to get, I think it is literally like trillions of miles of data to let the government start looking at it because it's a cover your ass.
It's regulation.
Yeah. And so have you been privy to any of that tech? Minus what we see in like Teslas that are available right now.
So one thing I think is pretty interesting, like the data that Teslas collect, right? So they're driving every day, if it's autonomous, if they're capturing all the road data, so it knows where every single vehicle is, it knows where it is in the lines, and if you think about that from like global scale, it can essentially create like a 3D map of the world. So if you look at the AI and machine learning that's built into it, eventually we won't really need to ever even have steering wheels because they're going to learn, they're going to communicate with each other. Every Tesla on the road is going to start to map this world more and more every day. It'll learn more and more every day. As people buy more and more Teslas or autonomous vehicles, it'll fuel the algorithm just to map that world a little bit more efficiently. So eventually there's not even going to be like a steering wheel in the car.
One of the arguments I hadn't really thought about with this and should have anticipated, but there were a lot of people who, and I get it, they were making the argument going, I mean, it would be a couple different levels, and I'll kind of combine them. They would say, first of all, self-driving car is made for that not to happen. So when it happens, you question, can it all happen at once? And then another level people took to it, which is, I think, just from a layman's view, is quite possible, is that, what if they all get hacked?
It's a very real concern. Like, very, very real.
See, and that gives me a lot of pause.
Yeah.
And that was just a total miss on me. But
yeah, like one of the pipelines just got hacked. I mean, obviously they're not as call it technically safe as Tesla would be naturally. But like if something like that can get hacked, something like the grid gets hacked, something like Tesla's getting autonomous vehicles get hacked, it's a real concern.
Is there a way to build it on like a quantum network, like something even above like blockchain ability that allows for absolute record keeping and no opportunity for like a 0 day or something? I'm getting a little technical, but to like do some things to create holes in software for bad actors to come in and take control?
I think if we're using Tesla as an example, so they're building Starlink, the satellite network. I think if everything's tied to that and they have ultimate control over that, I think that'll help tremendously.
And how does that work? Like what's it called, Starlink?
Yeah, so I'm no expert by any means.
Okay.
I'll just like share what I know about it. Putting up hundreds of satellites all around the world in orbit, and providing a satellite network. So for think of it as Wi-Fi for everybody in the world, using Tesla satellites. So instead of like using Comcast or Verizon, you could have access to Starlink. So say like you live on top of a mountain or something like that, right? You can tap into the Starlink service, and now you have service.
Now, they can monetize the fuck out of that.
Come on.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
So why are we so worried about them as a car company? Their margins don't matter.
Oh, Tesla's much larger. Well, Tesla's only one thing that Elon does.
And that's
people should
the other
invest
thing.
into Elon, not
Yes.
Tesla. Yeah.
Yeah, but like in the scorekeeping game of life, Tesla's separate from space. They're different entities, right? So they still have to perform on their own that way. Yes, they're all attached to Elon. But like if that's owned by Tesla, they're going to have a monopoly on the data repository, it sounds like.
Right. I'm not sure I don't think Tesla owns it. It's probably an entity in of itself.
Interesting.
But
okay.
He has access. He can use it for all of his other entities, obviously. He created it.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's what, of course.
Yeah.
It's one of his. And so, yeah, he has control over it, and he can control the monetization flow. Like, we're going to charge 1 penny to Tesla for that. Mm-hmm. He's wild, man.
Unbelievable human being.
You've been a fan for a long time?
since Sunrun. When the PayPal days, I wasn't really, I didn't know him. I wasn't really in that world. So can't speak to that. But like when I was in renewable and he was running, Solar City, that was unbelievable to watch come to fruition.
I don't understand why he gets a lot of hate.
I don't know. Why does anybody get hate, honestly?
Great question.
Yeah, it's just like a need. And if it comes from the media tends to be quite malicious. They like to control the narrative a little bit.
No, they would never
Come
do that.
on, no.
They would never do that. I just don't, like, I get it with, like, the gossip and the politics and stuff, like, things like that. Okay. I think it's fucking horrible what they're doing, but, like, I understand why their angle is to attack, and do everything. Fine. But, like, when we're talking about things to, like, better humanity, I don't understand. I guess it sells, but I don't understand the mindset behind that.
The efficacy in a lot of like big media is just diminished rapidly. It almost like hardly exists anymore.
Is that solvable?
People need to stop consuming it and enjoying it the way they do. The only reason they publish so much is because they make money off of it. The only reason they make money off of it because a lot of people view it, and the only reason a lot of people view it is because like they're addicted to that kind of like negativity, I guess. Yeah, it's just two different types of people, I guess.
But people don't get off their phones if they know it's not good for them.
Sure.
It's the same psychology.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that's going to stop? I mean, I don't think that's going to stop. I think people can't get enough of it. Even if they hate it, they still have to read it. The headline.
You're absolutely right. And even like I'm not a negative person by any means, but like I still see the shit. I have to read the headline. Maybe I won't click on the article, but like it's still going to affect me in some way, you know? Even subconsciously, if you don't even think it does, truly.
The subconscious is, that's the most underappreciated part to me. Because like you even think about, I was talking with someone about this, like the push button notifications. Think about even the news app on Apple. I figured out, now I'm experimenting with it. I'm going to keep doing this for a couple months and then I'll give some results. But I realized, and it probably was like 5, I don't know, maybe not 5, but 2 or 3 straight years of this. I realized that literally the only 2 places that they send me notifications from are CNN and Fox News. And so one will come in right before the other on a given news story. And I actually pay attention to see how I'm going to be, like, if I were just getting the CNN or I were just getting the Fox, what I was going to think about this. It is psychologically damaging.
You're absolutely right. But they're monetizing from it, so they're not going to stop. So, like, human psychology needs to change, and eventually they'll stop monetizing from it because it'll be negligible. But until that happens, us as humans need to change the way we consume content and consume media, and then from there we'll be able to, like, I don't know, change the narrative a little bit there. But like, it's not up to them; it's up to us.
Yeah, see, I'm a cynic on that a little bit. Like, I don't think we can change, and maybe that's like not having hope in people, but for certain things, like I know myself included, maybe you included, like most of us, we're going to go to the law of averages, and the law of averages says we like negative shit. We don't like it, but we're addicted to it. We're not going to change. And so the way I think about it a little bit is that there has to be some sort of tech that's going to change us. And I may be getting way out of bounds here on what I know and what the ramifications of it are, but I do think about, in particularly, the one thing Elon talks about publicly a lot that he's working on is like the Neuralink and whatever. And I think about that from like a fact-checking basis. Because do you ever look at this where it says like, according to fact-checkers, right? It's like, well, who the fuck are these people, right? Like, what do they think? Like, are they right-wingers? Are they left-wingers? Like, what's their bias? We all have bias. I don't blame them. How do we have a world where information is just distilled perfectly to you? Like this, like a robot, which is a slippery slope. Like, this is what happened. Here was the beginning. Here was the middle. Here was the end. Is that going to be when we can like read each other's minds a little bit with Neuralink?
I feel like a lot of it comes down to what's true and what's not, and what's manipulated along the process. So if you keep it factual, it's not misconstrued by the media, because like ultimately there's a higher power there. I'm not saying like nothing religious. I'm saying like consumption wise, there's a higher power that causes you to think the way you think. It just mainly built upon whatever you consume. A lot of people say like what you consume is who you are, and until like that object that you're consuming, that changes. So I guess essentially from what we were talking about, from people need to change. There's something that needs to change the people, and typically that is the consumption method, and that ultimately comes down to the media. So I guess you're right. The people won't change without something else causing them to change.
Well, I think the important other thing that I should have mentioned as well, that's a question for now until we have like that causation, because it's not like Neuralink's here right now. You know, it's going to be a little while. What about like our attention? As masses, we put our attention on certain spaces, right? So where's the average attention now, including for older people in many cases? It's on the main social platforms, you know? So if you are looking at, people have their platform of choice, but chances are they kind of integrate across a lot of them. You're getting your information from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or TikTok.
Most of them are owned by one larger party.
Yes. Yeah. And they're all a part of the same, and now I'm getting towards some of the circles you run in, which, you know, it is what it is, but you can have a lot of people who are trying to do great things, but they're all a part of the same community. You've had that quote-unquote Silicon Valley community, right? And it's not a fault in the sense that this is just the way it works. When you're all a part of a big group, you tend to take the thinking of the whole group, right? And so you see biases on these platforms where, you know, I think we're far past the point where it's like this political left-right thing. I think it's like there's a certain opinion you can have on anything, and like it has to kind of match what they want. And if it doesn't, you don't go. And I don't know that it's like and maybe they did, but I try to see the good in it. I don't know that they sat in a back room and cooked it up and said, "Yo, we're gonna fuck all these people over." I think it just kind of, it's like a sand peeling away at time, like it kind of rusts off, or whatever the term is, like it blows off, and then suddenly, boom, you know, you have this barren desert instead of this canyon or something like that. You know, I don't even know if that's a question, but do you think much about the fact that attention, even if there's like a new platform that comes into the fold, like TikTok did recently, like that attention is what has to change, because that's like the public square, versus tech is going to change us soon enough, or people are just going to have to change, like you were saying, which I obviously don't know that's going to happen. It's loaded. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. In the middle of that, what I thought of is a lot of people ask us like, what's your end goal, right? And it's either you IPO and you become that big company, or you join a big company to build inside of. And I think you really need to look at what are the intentions of the big companies that give you offers, right? And I think it comes down to the upcoming generation of entrepreneurs and tech companies. If their head's on straight, they'll look at that and won't just look at the dollar figure that they throw at you. Because to like a Facebook, unlimited money. Doesn't matter. If they want something, they're going to buy it. So you need the power in the founder to say, no, fuck you. I don't like what you're about. I don't like what you're going to do with my technology, because like for humankind as a whole, I don't see how you're going to benefit, or how you're going to benefit humanity with it. So I think the power needs to come in the entrepreneur and the founder, not to get greedy and to say, no, I don't care if you offered me an extra $100 million over my competitor. I like your competitor's intentions with what you're going to do. I see a better fit for my tech inside of this company from like an efficacy standpoint.
You took that top-down approach. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. I haven't talked about this. So instead of I was coming at it from the masses, and you took it right to the source, right? So the 4 companies, for example, that I mentioned, they were all startups in Silicon Valley once, and at different times, and they rose to prominence. So there's going to be, in the attention economy, there's going to be more that rise up and maybe take away, a Facebook or something that's dying off, something like that. So you think the impetus is on creating more openness in the people who are creating these things to lead the way versus what you were talking about a few minutes ago, which is like the masses got to change. You think the masses can change when the people at the top change, and you think it's possible that the people at the top can change?
Yes, to a degree, but
okay.
I think the damage is done for the big corporations, right? They are who they are. They're too large. They can't be agile. They can't adapt to new things. Where the upcoming companies that they're naturally going to acquire, the way I look at it is like large corporations like Facebook, Twitter, you name it, they don't necessarily build as much innovation as they did when they started. Now they buy innovation. So they acquire innovative people, innovative companies, and that's how they drive their innovation. So you can call it building it if you want, but essentially it's just buying it. So I think if the intentions in the people building the innovation are, if their head's on straight, I think that's what can ultimately save it.
I'm going to put my cynic hat on again.
Hit me.
The older I get, the more I realize how much money is the most important thing in the world. And I do believe that every person has a number. And when you're talking about companies that have the GDP of a fucking decent-sized country and have massive economies of scale to a level that only once has ever been touched, I would say, which was Standard Oil, which got broken up, and Standard Oil didn't have the upside that these places do. It gets real. It's almost like the cork is unscrewed, or the cork's out of the bottle. You can't put it all the way back in this case. I don't know. You seem to think that there are people who have that higher calling of fuck you and your money. My thought on the other end is you might be right, but the people who are still doing the fucking are the people who they say no to, who then can say, okay, I'm going to go buy these guys, or I'm going to go fuck you up now. Good luck. I'm going to throw 1,000 lawyers at you to sue you into submission over nothing. And I'm going to outlast you because money, I can burn it in the air. It doesn't matter to me.
It comes down to greed, ultimately. It's like, yes, you have your number, but if you achieve that number and then somebody comes in and decides to double it, but you don't like their intentions, you need to stay true to what your number originally was and what your ultimate goal was from the beginning. Because once you get further down this path, the numbers get larger, but you need to stay true to your roots and realize, okay, this is when I started this is what I wanted to do. And I didn't want to go past a certain point, even if there was a larger corporation that tripled my offer and my number is now pennies. I think that plays a big role into it. Greed is one of the most important factors when making these kinds of decisions, I would imagine.
There was a bartender I knew back in the day who I used to play at these card games up at a place, and it'd be big poker games, and the bartender there had been there for 20 years. He's just one of those guys who knew everyone, knew whatever. And he used to joke, but I don't know, it might have been halfway serious, that he had this agreement with a buddy of his. He was he would say it to me dead seriously. I still think he was joking, but the concept. I forget what it was, but if he ever did something, if he became something, put 3 in the back of his head and he left money in a safety deposit box that, the guy gets paid for throwing hit on him. And I always thought about that because when you look at these tech companies, they all started in a garage or in a van or in the back of a dorm room or an apartment or a fucking side street or a coffee shop. They started oftentimes with, you look at them, a lot of these founders didn't come from money. They weren't rich. They weren't daddy's trust fund baby. They were just I got this fucking wild idea. Let's see what, they're sitting there fucking ripping a bong and making the next online group chat, and I don't know that there's a number, right, of money or number of employees or something, but at some point you stop being that startup in a garage, and without knowing it, they all cross over. And some of them cross over for the worse, and some of them just cross over to where they lose their roots of being innovative, right? But the ones that cross over for the worse, where they get so caught up in the game and lose sight of the fact that they're fucking killing humanity in some way, it can happen to everyone. And so I even think about the startups now that you're talking about, and I'm like, even you guys, do you have a point where it's like, you fucking grind for 10 more years and you're making billions of dollars as a company and the preeminent provider of 3D tech in the world, that like you forget, we were fucking around at the beginning of this. It's like it's not you so much as it's like human nature.
Yeah. I think the key is like, don't lose your grit, because ultimately that's like what it was founded on, and that's like why you became successful, is because you had that quality. Where you mentioned like trust fund babies. Trust fund babies don't have the grit it takes to start a startup, and that's why they don't. You typically do it. That's why you see a lot of like, I'm from nothing and I'm gonna build something kind of people, because it's like, it's a quality that you have, and you need it. Life experiences teach you those kinds of qualities, and I think. And there's a funny story. I'll leave names out of it, but it was something that I've recently heard and experienced. It was like one large corporation. I'll start here. There was a individual, had a ton of grit, small guy, didn't have much, built something very, very groundbreaking and transformative in the world. Was ready to exit. Somebody gave him an offer. Offer was too low. Said, no way. I think the offer was something around like maybe like $40 million or something like that. And he was like, nah, I wouldn't take that, but I would take like 150. And went back to the company. Company said, cool, sounds good. We'll give you 150. Boom, acquired, just like that. Because like money isn't an object. It doesn't matter. It's not even real to them. So they'll buy whatever. If they want it, they will have it. So you got to stay true to who you want to give it to.
I'm going to butcher this quote, I think, but it just reminds me. I think it was Eric Schmidt. It was, because it was YouTube. But I'm going to butcher the quote, but I'm going to get the idea right. After he bought YouTube in like 2006, right after they had been born, and like, obviously great investment. Someone, I think they paid like $1 billion for it, or $2 billion, something like that, which a lot of money to us, but in the context, fucking free compared to what they got out of it. Someone asked him, they said, what do you think about the price? Do you think it was a fair price? And he said, what? I can't answer that. And they're like, why not? And he goes, because we either just overpaid the fuck out of this thing and it's going to be nothing, or they're the dumbest people of all time and just sold us the greatest thing ever for no money. They're like, sir, it was $1 billion. And he's like, yeah, what happens when I'm doing $100 billion a year? Like, it's like fairy dust to them. Yeah. If once you have that economy of scale, it's like, all right, let's see what they'll take. And it's like they feel it out. And I hear those stories. It's not the first time I've heard that, where somebody's got like a number and then they're like, oh, let me throw out. Let me see if they'll take this. And they're like, yeah, sounds good. Cash or check.
It's like, holy shit, it worked.
Yeah. And then you're like, what would they have paid for it? Like for real. It's scary, man.
But on the flip side, like, you have to look at what these large corporations have the ability to turn small startups into. It's like you have this tiny little piece of technology. They're the kings of monetization. If they have something cool and they have their eye on it, either one, they'll buy it so their competitors don't, to have like an upper hand, or they'll buy it because like I see directly how this can fit into our current ecosystem and how I can make billions and billions of dollars from it. You obviously don't have the ability to do that. It could take you a lifetime and you'll never be able to bring it to the scale that we can, but we'll give you X and we'll do this for you.
Well, I still think that if people, like, if you're running one of these companies and you go to get bought because of the resources that company has, and that's why you agree to it, the thing is, you do still, most of the time, I'm sure there's some examples where this doesn't happen, you don't get to build the culture you wanted to build. So, even though, like, let's use Google, for example, and let's use you guys as an example. Let's say tomorrow, Google comes in and says, all right, we're going to buy Soar. Use a round number. Let's say $1 billion. And you guys are like, all right, fuck yeah, we're in. They want to buy you guys, so they want the three of you coming in and doing your thing. But now they're going to integrate you inside of their company and everything, and they're going to bring their people in or whatever. Even though in the short term, that can allow you guys, those kinds of resources and economies of scale, can allow you guys to make a lot more progress right now. I still think about the long term and like, what does it cap on the ceiling? Like, do you guys think about that? Or are you more just like, all right, we hope to not be in a position where we have to say yes to something because we're going to get rated, you know, with the tech or something like that?
So there's a couple different ways you can protect that. It's either one, scale, or two, IP and patents. But it's like it happens all the time, and you see it where it's like they give you like a golden handcuff. Hey, we'll give you $500 million, but you need to come work for us for 4 years. I need you and what you've been building and your team to build this inside of, I call it Google, just for the sake of the example, where it's not yours anymore, but you're still the one running it. I don't know if I would want that situation because like it's no longer mine, no matter what anybody wants to say. But I think it says a lot about what you've built and who you are. Because there's one thing, it's either you don't get the golden handcuff, give you $250,000 or $250 million, and I just want your technology. To me, that slap in the face says, you got lucky, you don't have shit, you don't have what it takes to run this. We do. So give us the tech. Good work so far, but you can't bring this to multi-billion dollars. The golden handcuff thing where say, hey, come inside, build this with us for 4 years, that's them investing into, one, the technology, but also the founders. It's like you as human beings have something, and I need you to bring this to a $100 billion product.
But now we're going to package up how you bring that because guess what? You don't have full say over the resources we make you use. And that's the question. Because like you guys right now, like I have a view into your culture. Your culture is so great because you've added these engineers over time, right? They're like on the ground floor and they're in there. They're fucking building this with you and everything. And now like you get bought by a Google tomorrow. Now they're throwing you a lot of talent. Don't get me wrong. Like there's no idiots working at Google. But there's a certain way they do things. You know, there's not like this, all right, let's talk about this.
It's the freedom.
Right.
You're gone. Now you're an employee. After you spent 5-10 years, however long it was, building this on your own, and you were your own boss, and you were the man behind it. It was all your decisions, and whatever you say goes. Now it's up to Google. Now you're just another employee. You're just a number because, like, to them, you're nothing. But to everybody else in your life personally, you're the king of the world.
I think about Systrom and Krieger a lot with this, who you brought up earlier. That was a great one to bring up.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's been like a tell-all book or anything on this. I would love to read that, though. They sold Instagram for, I think, $1 billion in 2012.
I believe so.
Right? Like 2012-ish. And they stayed at the company until August 2018. And during that time, Instagram went from, let's be honest, it went from here to like through the fucking roof. And I have no doubt that the scalability of some of the things they did definitely was hugely benefited from Facebook buying them. And that's the beauty of the trade. The downside of the trade is it's very clear that Zuckerberg resented them because they destroyed his fucking blue F, right? They destroyed its reputation. All the cool kids went to Instagram. And even though it scaled very well, I remember going on Instagram for real for like the first time on my phone. I wasn't even on it until I didn't get an Instagram until I got it in 2017 and never used it. But I got it like September 2018. And I had been on it for a while though, doing marketing for people. And I remember using this app in like 2016. Like, God damn, it's so simple. It's so perfect. Like a little old lady could fucking scroll, boop, boop, double tap. And then they added the stories in like 2017, I think. Scroll at the top, boop, tap, whatever. And that beauty of just like anyone can figure this out, they scaled that so well and then added to like the picture ability and like some of the quality and added in a little bit of video. They didn't overcomplicate it. So even when you heard that there was all kinds of shit behind the scenes going on where there was a lot of button heads and Facebook was sending in people, Krieger and Systrom, they still had a separate office and they could still kind of build out their team, right? And they kept it as small as Zuckerberg allowed them for, you know, to a certain extent. I know there was still infiltration and all that. But when they left, I don't know how you feel about Instagram now, but I fucking hate that app. They have cluttered the fuck out of it. There is text everywhere. The menu is a disaster. The bottom menu I don't even use. I don't even know what's on there. Don't give a fuck what's on there. And it's this, I mean, people already tried too hard on Instagram, myself included for a while there. You know, it's like it already had that culture, and now they've taken this app that used to be, we talked about like the 2-click method earlier, used to be like 2 clicks and figure it out, to like, where the fuck is anything?
Yeah, I think that's like the Facebook way. So it's funny you mentioned that. So my father, who...
You're getting warmed up over there.
Oh, man. He despises like Facebook and like big technology. Smartest guy that I know. And like he worked in tech, I guess, in the late 90s when it was like just emerging, and he sees it now, and he was just so against it. I was like, Dad, you got to get on Facebook. If like he was trying to do these things, I was like, it solves all your problems. Just try, don't engage too much, don't give him access to anything, because he's like real conservative on his data. But he was trying to use it.
Let's talk about that. Bookmark that.
Yeah, for sure. And he was saying, I haven't used a platform like this in my life, and I don't know how to navigate this. So I don't think they're trying to acquire new users. They're just trying to add resources to their existing. Because if it's a new user and he's like that's not the target demographic for them, they could give a shit if he uses it, and anybody older, because like they can't navigate it. They don't know how. It's just not going to happen. It's too cluttered. There's too much going on. And like imagine if you went on Facebook today or Instagram today and you've never used it before, you would have no idea how to navigate it. No tutorial, no nothing. It's like, here you go. Here's our stuff. But yeah, having that conversation with him, I was walking him through it, and he was just clueless.
And he's a tech background guy.
Yeah, like he gets how everything works, that kind of thing, but just like the user experience is just lost.
I don't know, like, you're saying they're not going for new users. That's a death knell to me, because they and that's what blows my mind. It blows my mind about what they've done to Instagram, because and it's an ego thing. Has to be. Because they saw what they did to Facebook. They saw when you drive the key demographic, and I'm going to mix a couple demographics here and say, like, when you drive the 14 to 26-year-olds off a platform, you're done, right? You may last a while. But there's a lot of people, you know, Gen Xers, boomers, fucking all over Facebook still. They're still churning out some money there. But, like, that's going to fade, right? And now the cracks in the foundation of the same things that I saw with Facebook are happening with Instagram. And like, you see how much TikTok just jumped in here and took an entire new medium. What happens when an app that isn't identical to Instagram, but does something else new, but adds in enough of like that pictorial asset of Instagram, comes in and makes it 2 clicks to figure it out? I feel like these 13-year-olds who are digital and are trained, their minds are trained to find the simple things and find the cool new thing, they're going to find it.
Yeah, but then Facebook's going to buy them. Just like how Facebook bought Instagram. So Facebook's bigger than just like the consumer-facing platforms. Like, think about their ad network that they integrate throughout all of their platforms. They're just going to keep on buying whatever's hot and whatever's new. It's just like the Reels thing. They didn't have to buy anything because they can compete directly just by like altering a few things and adding a feature. But eventually they'll like acquire a new platform, just like they went from Facebook to Instagram, and now Instagram's like the big honcho. And then the next one is whatever it's going to be. But they'll still integrate like that ad platform across, and they're going to monetize across all of them. And ultimately, it's just they'll collect more and more and more data, and they'll just get more and more powerful.
Have you guys looked at, I don't want to ask this without you having to like say anything if you are talking with people, but like Facebook is the ultimate 2D banner ad, you know, type social, right? Even if it's not a banner, you know, it's within your feed. It says promoted. It sticks out like a sore thumb. Have you thought about like social media, not just Facebook, like in general, in a 3D world? Yeah. And what does that look like to the best of your knowledge right now?
It's going to save the advertising industry, because right now it's like rapidly diminishing. 2D ads, nobody watches them. Like we said before, like I don't know why anybody pays for it, but if ultimately it could be the same content in like a 3D nature, add another dimension to it, and people will engage. That'll happen naturally just because like it's new, it's cool. But if you think about it, in like another 10 years, it's going to have to change again. So naturally, like the natural progression, it goes from like 2D ads, archaic, dying, needs to change, to 3D, immersive, and that'll live for like another 10 years. And then from there, what's next? I have no idea. But like this is obviously the next step.
Because I can't concept that in my head. I can't I've thought about that, and I'm like, okay, social media 3D. I mean, first of all, we got to see the world where the hardware can handle it, right? Because what you're talking about, you can do that, but I mean, we first got to get people used to the whole phone thing that we've already hit on a million times. But then the idea of like, okay, 10 years from now, people are going to have some sort of hardware probably built into their phone or maybe built in their fucking body by then.
There you go.
I don't know. That's a whole nother thing. You know, where they're going to set their glasses, something where they're going to engage with people like this, you know, and like reach out and the haptic stuff you talk about is going to be a part of social media. Right. So now it's like we bring it full circle where we took people away from being social together by going online to fucking comment on their latest picture that's the same one as the last fucking 10 that they took in the last 2 weeks to now, okay, we still have people apart, but now there's this emotional connection, whatever, because we're creating them actually in person again and making them feel like they're making eye contact and actually like having that bond.
Yeah. So I think like the next natural progression is going to be like digital worlds and like socially digital worlds where like you don't have to leave your house to interact anymore. Or right now, like you could be in person with your best friends and you're not engaged physically with the people you're surrounded by. You're consumed by your whatever platform you're using at the moment. But eventually, I think like that barrier is going to disappear. There's no longer like, hey, let's go out for cocktails. It's going to be like, okay, I'm going to sit in my house, have cocktails with my digital friends. That's like the next thing.
Wait, with my digital friends?
Probably, I would imagine.
Are they real?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But not like physically real.
Not physically.
Yeah.
But they're real people.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Have you seen this little Miquela on Instagram?
Give me some context. It's probably.
I'm going to pull her up.
Okay.
You may have seen her before. Lil Miquela was a creation. I forget the name of the company.
Yeah, that's what I thought. She's not real. She's like a digital asset.
Yep.
Yeah.
She looks like a Pixar, like a on steroids Pixar, right? You see her? I'll put her.
It's like a deep fake kind of thing.
Yeah, I'll put her in the, I think it's this side, the bottom of the screen for people to see if they're watching. But they created this character, right? And you can tell she's not real, right?
Can you though? Compared to like most other influencers on social media? No, there's not like a huge difference. Because everybody there is pretty much fake also.
You were making my point for me.
Yeah.
Fair. I can tell eye test that like that's beyond just like some crazy fucking visco bitch filtering. You're not allowed to say bitch anymore. Sorry. I didn't mean it like that. But anyway, we're a little deep on alcohol here, whatever. So this right here, for like one of my very early podcasts, I was looking at the context of like influencers. Mm-hmm. And I came across an article, and then I looked at some others, but there was just one that struck me heavy where they were talking about the integration of like virtual and physical worlds, right? And how the line is blurring between the two, not just with people, but with what's real and what's not real. Mm-hmm. So there was a kid who was quoted who was front end Gen Zer. He was like 18 years old last year, so born in 2002, something like that. And the quotes he was given like scared the fuck out of me because he was talking about Lil Miquela, and he was talking about her saying that, she doesn't think this. She feels this way. She represents this kind of thing. Like she's down to do blank. She's into these kinds of things. And then they're like, you're talking about her like she's a fucking person. She goes, and the kid goes, well, the only thing I've known growing up is people who are online anyway, so they're digital. It's no different. Yeah. She's no different. In fact, she's more real than they are. I mean, you can go down a rabbit hole with this, talk about like sex dolls and shit and all this crazy stuff, you know, like the whole virtual whatever. Like, we don't need to go crazy, but this looks a lot like what we have conditioned the youngest generations to consider. Oh yeah, it's just a part. She's a person.
Yeah, absolutely.
She can feel things like me. Mm-hmm. You're just looking at me like, yeah, no, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's like the world we're living in today, though. Whether you like it or you're not, I feel like we're aging rapidly, trying to keep up.
I'm gonna come back to the data point at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not forget that because I want to ask about that. But this is a good time to ask about like how like NFTs are a bootloader into this, because everyone and their mother was screaming the word NFT in February and March. You were looking at that months before. I know Giovanni was too. I actually was, not because I found it, but I had Cole Kennelly in here, and he stayed after and talked to me a lot. He knows all about that shit. And so I started looking heavy. And then 3 months later, everyone's like, oh, NFTs are the biggest thing. So there's a lot of crap there. We know that. And like the market now has settled down because the initial hoopla was like fucking stupid and people were selling shit assets for millions of dollars. But the thing that is now starting to become a part of the equation with NFTs is like these virtual worlds, like buying a digital horse. I see there was one, I don't even know if it was an NFT, but they were buying like a digital house and whatever. Like, are people going to look at that, in your opinion, the way that we look at real horses and real houses?
Absolutely. Yeah, so interesting you bring this up. So I was talking to Blau, Justin, everybody knows him as Blau, a few months back, and he was talking about building this, like, the entire virtual world. It's like a one-to-one representation of the digital world.
Is that the producer, Blau?
Yeah, DJ.
Oh, yeah.
He, essentially, you're able to, like, buy digital real estate the same as it would be in real life, but you can access it through, like, either, like, a VR, AR environment, some kind of, like, immersion, or put it into a video game. So him and a couple of the other DJs seem like they're building, like, this whole digital world where there's, like, live events happening in these spaces where different technologies are adapted to bring, like, real life events and concerts, like Vodcast. They'll use that, and, like, I can go to BB&T venue in this digital world on Friday at 8 p.m. and there's going to be a concert happening, and then I leave and drive home. So it's like this full one-to-one real life video game. Think of it like I don't know, like Grand Theft Auto, but like your real life, and like you have control over what happens in that world.
And your friends go there.
Yeah, your friends go there and say, hey, meet me at this venue at X time in this digital world, whether it's VR or whatever it may be.
Loaded question, but how do you create value on that? And I'll qualify that by saying, like, with land, it's limited. There's a world, right? So we're talking about going multiplanetary, but again, we know, like, Mars, for example, we know the size of that. There is a limited supply. There's not this unlimited, infinite supply of land, whereas in a virtual world, you can just create shit wherever. So how do you even value something if, like, someone buys a mansion in this town in the virtual world? All right, I'm going to create my own fucking town and buy a mansion. Like, what's the value?
I guess you can, like, authenticate it somehow via blockchain and say, this is my house, nobody else can replicate my house, similar to, like, nobody can build the same house I'm in right now, and this real estate is more valuable than 3 towns over because it's closer to X, just like how, like, you start to diminish in value when you go farther away from a city, similar to that. Yeah, I'm not really sure to that degree. Yeah,
because, like, when you build a house right now, you have to pay to build the physical house. You have to pay for the land, and, like, the land is in a certain spot. But hypothetically, and I'm talking out of my ass here, but in virtual world, you'd be like, yo, if you have the resources to do it at home, like people build regular tech at home, like, all right, I'm going to build this new town right there, code it in there, boop, 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 boop.
But most people can't, just like how most people today can't buy the lumber, they can't put the nails in the framing, they can't put the shingles on the roof, they can't build a home. Similar to, like you, I, probably your neighbors down the street, they can't build a digital home. They don't know how, they don't have the resources for it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point.
So it's like another skill. It's like being a carpenter in that digital world. I'm like a developer in this digital space because, like, I'm just an engineer and I know how to build 3D representations of homes. That's like the modern day, like, civil engineer or carpenter.
Well, what about, to go back really broad on the NFTs, because you and I obviously have talked about this a lot over the last several months off camera, but it seems to me that guys like you who are in spaces around it and are aware of the space, and then I'd like to say someone like me who's now been around that, you know, we see it as that mad craze that it was, where there's just people throwing shit at the wall. Suddenly everything's valuable, and all the shit is going to fade out of the market and be worth nothing, and people may get punished for whatever they put their brand behind. But, you know, that 5-10% that's, like, legit, it's first inning, right? And it's, like, kind of the beginning here. Do you think, though, that based on the fact that most of the NFTs we're seeing are built in 2D or, you know, tech that's not shocking, right? Do you think that you guys, I'll use Top Shot as an example, are going to take, like, the NBA Top Shot moments that people are buying on video and now move it to, like, 3D with NFTs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, NFT market's kind of crazy right now. And so we've been in the space for a while. There's a reason we haven't published anything. I think we needed the market to settle down and become much more realistic before anybody does anything. So we have a pipeline of a couple projects coming up. So one with Jeff Ross, it'll be like a virtual comedy tour where you're able to like...
Oh, we're announcing this. Let's do it.
We're streaming.
We're doing it here. Let's go.
We'll be like streaming it to the homes of the viewers where they could pop up Jeff Ross like in their own home, and you can give like a comedy roast.
Jeff Ross is the roast master.
Oh, man.
People that don't know,
the king. Come on,
he's the homie. Is what he is. That guy's cool as shit.
Yeah.
But yes,
yeah. So things like that, and I think now in the next couple of months upcoming, there's like that market settled down a little bit, and now you can like reasonably price things, and there's not going to be like this crazy escalation of price from the initial drops, and now it'll help out on like the secondary sales and things like that, and there's like actual value instead of all of the crazy inflation. So now I think a lot of like the artists, they're not going to get killed on that secondary sale. Because I think like the whole goal for it is to get rid of the middleman, no more like little commissions and percentages taken out like from the labels and things like that. So now it can all truly go back to the artist and the producer of these drops.
So like to use the Jeff Ross example, he's working direct with the people creating the assets, and that's it. And it's just the two of them sharing on it, which in our case, we're looking at making like an AR asset with him and stuff, so we can produce that.
Yeah, where like before, I think a lot of people are just trying to capitalize on the hype, and if there's one person that knew a little bit more than the person with the following, if they knew a little bit more, it's like, okay, give me 60% of the drop and I'll make it come to fruition. When realistically, it was super easy to do from the begin with. To begin with, you didn't need somebody else to do this for you. You could do it yourself with a click of a button, and the whole goal of it was to get rid of that, and in the beginning, that was coming right back. So I think this like correction is very healthy for the entire market and like the vision for the whole industry as a whole.
Dude, I love it, because when we were talking with some of these guys, like floating the ideas of like, oh, would we do this or fuck with that? I talked with Anthony about it, and because, you know, full disclosure, like we had Chaz in there and me in there, like working on building some relationships with some guys. Like this is back mid-March, and he was really worried about like, yo, this market's going to reset. And I said something to him like, dude, that can't happen soon enough, because it'll take the there was so much desperation in the room right there. Like, guys, want to do it tomorrow. And it's like, yo, if you want to build something good, you really the creative's got to be great. And you have to figure out, what am I going to make that people are going to value intrinsically 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you know? And so I don't even think, I know I didn't, I don't know that Anthony or you expected that it was going to reset as soon as it did. But I shit you not, like that was like maybe like March 15th, March 16th. You can go look at the numbers. The market started like calming down like that day. And so all these conversations we were in, whether it was Jeff or someone else, it was like, it got a lot softer and like, okay, we can breathe. We can think about this, because you're dealing with like Jeff Ross. You're dealing with John or someone like that. I don't know if we want to talk about that right now, but you're dealing with guys like that who they have a lot of attention and they have a lot of ideas around it. And so, you know, like the hypothetical example of a basketball player or a fighter, right? You can market an NFT a lot better around, you know, like the NBA finals or a major fight coming up versus just like fucking dropping it right now, especially right now. Whereas, you know, if you wait 2, 3, 4 months and bide your time and build out creative and then work the marketing around it, this market's going to be mature enough that the buyers are going to be there for the shit that they're like, oh, that makes sense. Like even Beeple's painting, his digital creation that everyone looked at, that thing was fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Like someone bought that for $69 million. That's a great investment. 10 years from now, it's going to be worth a lot more, because this guy, for people who don't know, Beeple created, I think it was 13 straight years every single day of digital, unbelievable, like abstract paintings like digital art, and then put them in a collage all in one piece and sold that one piece online. And like some people are like, oh God, somebody bought a digital piece for $69 million. Would you buy the fucking Mona Lisa back at the beginning of the days for $69 million? Yes, you would. You know? There's value.
in the early days, they probably wouldn't have bought it. They wouldn't have seen the value.
Good point. Yeah. But there's always a few people that do.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
We have people coming to us all the time saying, hey, I have this NFT project. It's going to be great. I'm going to make $10 million from this, or 10's a lot, but like maybe like 3 to 4 when like the market was hot. And we would look at it and be like, yeah, you're a huge name, but just not realistic. It's not going to happen, and your intentions are not in the right place. We're in this for like the long haul. We see where the industry's going, and like we can truly fuel a lot of the creation of this. So sorry, we would turn down people left and right, just saying, hey, your intentions are not in the right place. It's not aligned with us. But yeah, I mean, from there, and I love to see that the market finally took that little correction, because now everybody's intentions are back on track. Now this industry can actually become what it was built to be.
There was a company back in, I think it was literally January 2018. Should have seen this one heavy. But that was when crypto was first booming. Yeah. First boom of it. And some company out on Long Island, New York, who made Long Island iced teas. I shit you not. Like in a can bottle or something. It was a penny stock. Like I don't even know if they sold any, right? But they were a public company. One day they made an announcement and said, we are no longer called Long Island Iced Tea. We are called Long Island Blockchain. And I should have known right there, that's top.
That's awesome.
Because, you saw it in like the end of February, all these companies started sprouting up that are like not tech companies at all. They're like, someone in their fucking mom's basement. Like, yo, we were called blank, and now we're called blank plus NFT. Yo, come do it with us. And so all these guys, even like big names, it's all like, we're trying to catch up to it. We're trying to catch up to it. They're coming to you like, well, these guys are telling me we can do fucking $5 million for this. And it's like, you don't want to be the bearer of bad news, and it might cause them to run away, but you're going to be right in the long term where you're like, bro, that's not going to happen. Yeah. Like, you're not making a fucking Beeple here. Like, that's, you know what I mean? And psychology stays the same in markets over time.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We saw it all like day after day after day. In the heat of it, you were there with us. It was like every single day there was somebody new, and it was like, I get it, you're a big basketball player, you're a big artist. Yeah, I understand that, and your likeness is through the roof. That's great, but everybody's trying to do this, and you need to settle down. And you saw some of them that we mentioned that to. They dropped one in a different route, and it flopped, And it's like, hey, we told you, you have to be careful of these things.
There was one guy I talked to who we never even brought it your way, because right away I liked how this guy thought. We had an understanding about it, and he was like, yo, I know there's some good NFTs, but like this is a fucking trap. Yeah. And I'm like, you're speaking my language. Cool. Because like it's cool to get a guy like that and look at the other side, like the volumetric side, because no one else can do that. Yeah. But he was saying that he felt forced to have to go do something, and then they later had to do it. And you see it come out, and you're like, he was right. Waited. Yeah, well, it was a situation where they got like they couldn't say no. I'll put it that way. Yeah. But it was cool to see that someone on the inside who was literally building one was like, this is not going to work. They understood, whereas everyone else is coming to you and they're like, 10 million, 5 million. Like, oh yeah, no problem. Like, there's a limited amount of money out there. When the first ones were going, the Turkish soccer player or whatever, it's like no one had NFTs out. Of course, it's the first one. People are throwing money at it. There was an MLB player who no one's ever heard of. He never played. He's a fucking artist now. More power to him. He dropped one for like 1.4 million in like 2 seconds because he was like the third guy to do it. Yeah. Like you get that. That's the early. Anyone who's the earliest to the game, they're gonna get that. But you have to have that understanding. And I know that there was. I'm definitely not gonna say who it was, but there was one of the people we were going back and forth with during like the heat of that, where it was like fucking someone every 5 minutes. There was one group that we talked to represented a bunch of people, and that was where I was like, oh shit, okay, this might reset a little sooner than I thought, because they were like, we have no incentive to have to do this. We will do this whenever we want. Because that was when it was like, oh, you have to do it now, you have to do it now. And they're like, no. And then I look back on that and I'm like, there's always the signs there that like, when you feel like it's going to happen because someone really smart says, yeah, it's going to happen right now. It probably is.
There's something so special about the community that was built early on. And I think Clubhouse fueled a lot of that. Even like the early days of Clubhouse, like in like September when it was still in beta, and they created these, the NFT groups. There was just something about that was so special. And like, you knew that the passion that came from a lot of the individuals inside of it, you knew that there was something going to come from this, mainly because of the passion from all of these influential people that were involved. I would love to get their take on what happened to the entire market as a whole, and like how, if they're still bullish on the whole idea of it. I would imagine most of them were in there from the beginning for very good reasons, and they saw longevity. But that big influx in, I don't know, call it February and March. I would love to see their take on that.
Raiders on the ship.
Yeah.
That's all it was. And there's always the people who are in it for the long haul and see the value, provided there's value to be there, and there is. They're going to win. You know, and it gets frustrating in the short term because you see people like hijack a movement, and that's exactly what happened. And the big thing that I think sucks is like some artists got hijacked and fucked, you know? And now it seems like the knowledge of the space is much better, such that artists now understand, like, oh wait, I have a lot of leverage here, and they should. You know, they're bringing this stuff to life. And not to call out names here, but I saw a couple early on that came out from big name people, right, in coordination with whatever artist, and it's like, you know, what even is that? Like, what? It's a fucking stick figure. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's not going to age well.
It's because they said, I need this to be published within 2 weeks. Like, well, you're going to know that it was only built in 2 weeks. It's obvious.
Yeah. And that you have to, the people in business that I've seen in my career who I'm like, I take the most notes from, who I'm most impressed with, and most like, yo, how can I be like that guy or that girl? Like what do they have figured out? It's the ability to be here. 30,000 feet in the air, not get low, not get high, ask the simple questions, and actually read the answers back and not the answers you want to hear.
You're not influenced by anybody, no obstruction. You could look at everything from like a macro approach.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. I know I think we have 3 done.
Yeah, we have some really cool ones coming up.
Yeah.
If I could say so myself.
Yeah, Jeff obviously is like heavy in the pipeline.
Oh, and he's a blast to work with too.
Yeah.
He like makes the whole process so enjoyable.
People overuse the term down to earth, but I can't emphasize that enough. Like he's exactly what you see when he's doing a roast. Like that's him.
Yeah.
And then he's also very curious about the creative of it, which is great because you get a lot of these guys like, all right, yeah, make me one.
Yeah, I love it because he doesn't want to rush. He's like, I want this to be perfect, and I want to have a lot of control over it. And I feel like every time we're on the phone with him, and Giovanni can speak to this, I would imagine, much more than we can. But it's like a comedy roast in itself. Every single time we're on a call, I'm just belly laughing. I'm like, how does one individual have that power over the other human beings to just like belly laugh the way we do?
You know what's cool though? He sees a way bigger picture of this too, because he's a comedian.
Yeah,
and they got, unless your name was Andrew Schultz, Tim Dillon, Whitney Cummings, a few others, maybe like Bird and Bill Burr and Bert Kreischer and some I'm missing, or Joe Rogan, who obviously has like the biggest podcast in the world. Oh. You got crushed when COVID hit.
Yeah,
because comedians live to play, right? Like they play live. That's how they make their money. That's what they sell on, and like. To Jeff's credit, he's like, yeah, the world kind of stopped. And like, I wasn't as ready as I wanted to be for the last one. That's never going to happen again. Yeah. So you guys can build me in 3D. You can put me on a stage. I can be in Vegas playing a show, and I can be sold out in Wyoming at the same time. And so the guys who, it's very cool to me, the guys who have a bigger picture of like what's possible here, they look at a company like yours and they go, okay, the NFTs are cool. Like, let's do that. Let's do it right. We'll focus on that. But what's the long-term play here? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. They're true visionaries. I mean, they didn't get in the position that they are in today without being a visionary. And like, you have those types of people have an eye for new innovative ideas that they know is going to be the future because like they've been in it. They've seen the whole evolution of what they've been through, especially if they've been in it for a long time. Like Jeff, he's an older guy. He's been through it and he's seen like different eras of like call it media production. And he sees what's next. And naturally this is like the next progression.
Yeah. Now I want to come back to that data point though, because I don't want to forget about that.
Yeah.
You just reminded me saying that. What you guys do And I'm really speaking out of my league right now, saying this, like my understanding of how it all ties in, I can guess, but it requires a fuck ton of data. You're talking about reproducing people, right? So my question here is that you guys have a very intense awareness of that and an awareness of where the market is. I mean, you see how much people flipped out at Facebook, with the accept agreement, fucking taking everything. But how do you operate in that world where it's like, hey, we do need a lot from you, the user, in that way. In that way, you are a part of the product, but we're not going to infringe on that, and we're not going to sell you down the river here to this company and monetize that data.
Yeah, so I guess that's kind of two-part. There's two sides to that. So it's one on the capture side, two on the consumption side. So on the capture side, yes, to create these kinds of assets, you need to capture every data point known to a human body, right? So like we have that, and that's like a full 3D representation of all the data that builds a human being, right? So we have that. And then on the other side is similar to like how Snapchat collects all of this data, which most people have no clue. But to place these assets in an environment, you need to scan your entire room. So essentially, at its core, will fuel the adoption of like building this 3D representation of like the world. But you collect the data of like inside of everyone's home. So if say you wanted to place if you want to place Jeff Ross inside of your room here, and you wanted to see this comedy experience, to do that, you have to scan your entire environment so you can know that I want to place Jeff on this coffee table. So with that, the data you were able to collect is, I know what bottles on the table, I know the size of the table, I know what kind of rugs you have, I know the color of the paint on your wall, I know the depth of everything in this entire environment. Now think about that at scale. Millions and millions of users. I have every home in America. Think about Snapchat. Everybody uses Snapchat, and they're using these filters where they're scanning their environment. They're collecting all the data of the world, essentially. So you need to be very careful where all of that data goes and what you're doing with it.
There's a lot of directions I can take that. I'm trying to think where I want to go first. It's a tough problem, but it's like anything in life. If you want it, you have to pay for it, right? There's a price to pay for anything. If you guys are going to create this stuff, you can't just snap your finger out of thin air, be able to get it. But people, let's play devil's advocate. And I'm sure you guys have to do this all the time when you're talking with VCs or whoever. Okay, I'm the regular person, and I find out who you are, Soar, and I find out you're this company that's bringing me this thing. Why am I going to trust you guys with that data? And I'll even answer the question for a second and play cynic and say, we've already trusted every fucking company. Is that what you're relying on?
Most people don't care.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you got this to me. You got this to my phone. I trust you. You probably went through the hoops. Realistically, most of them probably did not. The regulation needs to... I mean, they're working on it, and there's a lot in legislation that's geared toward fixing like the data collection rules. But it's not quite there yet, and mainly because I believe legislation is like 5 years behind. They're still using the logic based off of like when Instagram was like midway through their creation. It's like it's not the same anymore. The type of data you're collecting is completely different, and now like they need to be thinking like a tech company. Where like Silicon Valley, the whole idea behind it is like rapid scale, rapid creation, rapid innovation. And I can grow faster than anything else. I don't know of any other industry or government or anything like that that scales like that. And 9 times out of 10, a tech company will scale faster than any government.
That's kind of easy to do.
Right?
Yeah.
And like that's the problem when they're the ones making the rules and making the laws around it, because I mean, hey, you're not going to keep up. So I think there needs to be like some kind of merge there. And like, I'm no expert in that space. That's just kind of like what I see. But I see changes that need to be made. Okay.
The second layer to this that I didn't go to first, I'm glad I didn't, because that gives some context right there that's important. Because, yeah, the regulatory environment's going to have to catch up with some things, and that's just kind of built into the expectation. Like, okay, we're going to get ahead of the government, so they're going to have to catch up. And like, you hope you don't, like, I'm not talking about you guys as a company, I'm saying like everyone, you hope that not enough damage in like international waters is done on the way. Okay. people talk about, you use the Snapchat example, correct, obviously. You know, people are videoing around. Even Instagram, you know, capturing stories and stuff. God knows what the hell Zuckerberg put into that. You know, you also look at TikTok, though, which is an interesting case because it's not an American-owned company. It is owned by Julian, who I probably pronounced that wrong, I'm sorry. But it's owned by a Chinese company. And so a lot of people, including myself, have had a lot of questions around the data transfer that can happen there because it's people videoing. They're capturing the whole area and putting that data on there. Some smarter people than me have explained to me and made me feel more comfortable about it in the sense that they're like the amount of, I don't even know if the word's data, but like the power you need to be able to transfer that data from the United States, because we're worried about our users here, to China, to get to mainland China, to the government, is beyond what we know we can do with tech in some cases. So that makes that part feel better. But they're still capturing something, and you have to worry about, like, machine learning, to me. I think about that. Did you ever read Superintelligence by Bostrom?
I have not.
You gotta read that.
Yeah.
Fucking wild. Don't smoke before you read it. Don't do that.
Gotcha.
Just fucking read it sober. And, like, you gotta read it in pieces. Like, it took me a month. I read 20 pages at a time, and I'd, like, get up and take a lap and think about life. And like be like, wow, I might, you know, be here when humanity ends. Side point. But he points through all these, he paints all these pictures of potential uses of like AI. And it's all derived on learning, like getting data points from right now. And so you're talking about Snapchat, you're talking about TikTok, whatever we're talking about, they're getting all these data points. And then you build an AI that eventually matches human intelligence and then surpasses it. Dude, what do you even do when that happens? Now, I mean, I have this picture here because that's the next frontier. Like, we had the nuke, and now it's like, can machines pass people and then not be told what to do anymore and fuck us all over?
There's a lot that goes into that conversation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think, again, comes back to efficacy and, like, what we allow the machines to do. Because, like, ultimately we're building them, right? They learn on their own, but there's also, like, a limit on what we allow them to learn. But if there's, like, a malicious approach to creating that machine learning, that's when I think there could be, like, very big problems. Like, everybody's scared of, like, nukes and things like that. Not so much. I'm more scared of what somebody creates and that learns on its own without us. You know what I mean?
There was, I don't know how true this is, but there was like an AI that Facebook, of course, Facebook built it like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. And the AI, they built two of them, and they invented their own language together. And they started fucking talking to each other in a language no one understood. And they were like, oop, and they just pulled the fucking plug button off them. I worry about where, you know, and I know movies like romanticize it, or not romanticize it, they fictionalize it, and it's not realistic, or at least right now realistic, but you look like Ex Machina where you can't just unplug it. Mm-hmm. You know, it might decide to do something. How do you not get to that point?
It's tough because, like, you have the smartest people in the world creating things that are built to be smarter than the person that's creating it. Mm-hmm. So, smartest people in the world building those kinds of things. What are the limits there, you know?
I don't know if there are any. I mean, I'm fucked up from reading Superintelligence, but you know.
Depends on the intent of the creation.
And that gets into like the moral question, because there are a lot of people who just say, yeah, you know, there's enough good people out there.
Doesn't matter. It only takes one bad.
There are
and
bad
one
people.
Really smart.
Yeah. There are bad people in this world. There always will be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you get the wrong people, and unfortunately, it doesn't even take like a bad person. It takes a blind person. Someone who's really smart and is just so fucking focused on it. You know? I worry about that, like, even thinking about, like, Kurzweil sometimes. He's drinking almond milk and eating, like, dry spinach and nothing else because he's trying to be here to live forever and fucking building all the Google algorithms that, you know, when you type out your email and it tries to autocorrect and it looks incredibly accurate. That's Ray Kurzweil building that. And I think about, like, he's not a bad guy. I love listening to him talk. Like, he's clearly, like, all about it. But, like, is he so, like, oh, we got to build this. We're going to live forever. That, like, one day he's like, oh, fuck. Oh, we're all going to die now. Like, you don't know, man.
You never know.
You don't. Well, one last thing before you get out of here that I got to ask you about is this whole movement now that is maturing. Like, it was new for a while. And so, like, we had to see where it was going to fall. And now we're starting to see the chips settle. And that is the COVID move of tech heavily, not just remote, which happened naturally, but to Miami, where suddenly Francis Suarez sends out a tweet on December 4th, and this, no pun intended, this nuclear bomb goes off, and suddenly, boom, people are leaving San Francisco. They're even leaving New York, where there was some tech infrastructure, and going down to the lovely South Beach. Do you think that is, because people are down there, like it has happened. Do you think that is a permanent thing, or that is something that will eventually reset and people will be like, yo, I like this, but I'm going to go back to where I was?
Yeah, something I've thought a lot about, and I'm sure you've been to Miami. You're familiar with like what it's like down there. Okay, gotcha.
Have I been to Miami?
So
it's my favorite place on planet Earth.
I literally think they're going to run out of space.
Why do you think that?
Before the boom, you go to Miami and like the traffic is ridiculous. There's people everywhere. There's like already not that much space. Yeah, there's high rises with like 60 floors and like you could pack them in. That's no problem. But the issue is pushing out inland. One interesting fact that I learned recently from last time I was down there, I actually heard this. If you venture closely outside of Brickell, there's like call it the slums, a lot of like breaking down buildings, and it's not like a great area to be. Don't get lost out there. And it's difficult to clean that up. And you would think with all the money and all the power and all the resources coming down there, why can't you clean that up? So back in the heyday of Miami, I guess you call it the cartel owned all the real estate, right? So they bought up all the real estate, and eventually they cleaned all that up. But the way they did that is they incarcerated them. So they're all in prison. They're all still there. But the problem with that is they still own all of the real estate. So they're in prison, and they're holding it near and dear, and they won't sell it. So the city can't buy back the real estate just outside, like surrounding Miami. So it's just decaying and falling apart. So there's like a couple mile radius with just nothing and just kind of slums, mainly because they can't get the real estate back from the incarcerated cartel members or the families of them. You're
saying that like on the edges of Miami, like where it starts to, okay, that's interesting. I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
Because look at that number behind you. I pulled it up. The Miami area, that's what's stunning. The area is over 55 square miles.
Yeah.
Right? And when you look at Miami, there are a lot, like even the infrastructure you're talking about, and I agree with you, there's a lot that's built. But there's also a lot that have been waiting to be built or finished, right? They've been sitting there with cranes, 30 of the 45 floors done, right? And so there is a lot of space to still build up. And I think, obviously, that's an overdrive right now. I mean, you got to put in an offer on an apartment in Miami. It's gone before you send the text.
I've been trying to move to Miami for quite some time now, for a couple months. And I have a couple of realtors working on it. And they'll send us a listing. It'll be perfect, exactly what we're looking for. I'm like, yeah, that's great. Please send me next steps. 15, 20 hour later, they'll say, oh, sorry, that one has been sold. I'm like, what the fuck? Are you kidding? It's so difficult. Unless you're down there, it's a bit difficult to move. Unless you're like paying like a full term in cash, but that's a whole nother story.
I got to look into that though, because what you just said was a total curveball. I know nothing about that. And it doesn't surprise me, like old cartel money and shit, just like holding on. I mean, God's not making any more land, so hold on to it.
Yeah.
But that is the thing. When you look at it versus like in Austin, and Austin's done a great job. And to be clear, Austin was happening before COVID. It was already a secondary landmark, right?
Absolutely.
And I had a client who went down there early and was like, yo, like he works in tech, like shit's happening there. But Austin is like an inland, hilly, mountainous, woods and shit on the outside town. It's this laid back kind of whatever. And I've never been there, but I know that from people that have been there a ton, lived there, whatever. It's not like this metropolitan, boom, let's get shit moving and building. They've handled it well for now. But like Miami, to go back to that point, they still do have room to build where they are. And if they can figure out, and I got to look into that. That's a curveball. But if they can figure out some of that no man's land around there, I got to look up New York. But that is a fuck ton of square mileage right there. That's got to be way bigger than New York. And like, it's Miami.
And it ventures out. There's like the rail is blowing up, Coral Gables, and like outside like the U, they're really starting to develop. And what's great is like the people that have been there forever, the real estate's going through the roof. So that's another thing that's great to see. The one thing, so I'm a big fan of the Florida Keys. I spent some time there. We actually built a lot of our company from like this cool little shack on the water in the Keys. It's a super special place and like very homey. And I just hope it doesn't get filled with the big tech that comes down and kind of inflates the cost of everything down there, because like it truly is a very special place, and like a lot of them are not going to be open to that. I call them outsiders coming in and buying up all the real estate. So I'm very curious to see what happens down there as well.
Some of that's not their choice, unfortunately,
Agreed.
Which is interesting. But they can, build the culture such that get the fuck out of here. You're not welcome. We'll see how that works. But to me, San Francisco, and we have to still see it play out. It's early here. You never know. Some people could go back. But look, I see a lot of people burning the boats. They fucking sold their shit out there. They are here. They're not here. They're in Miami, right? Like they're gone. It's going to be very interesting if that continues to age that way, the case study of San Francisco, because the living expenses that they allowed to get out of control there and the tax dollars that they allowed to happen that are a fuck ton that then people got nothing for. It's almost like COVID or no COVID, a lot of these big cities were almost saying to people, fuck you, please leave. And the only difference Miami did is Suarez said, yo, like, what can I do for you?
Come on in.
Like, all right, how can I keep my taxes low for you? I don't care what political side you're on. Like, if you can do that and demonstrate you have a well-functioning city, anyone's going to be like, yeah, that sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Like, I've spent a lot of time in San Francisco over the past couple of years, and every time I go, I'm never excited to be there. Like, yeah, there's a ton of innovation, there's a ton of tech, but I think it's dying and it's oversaturated. Well, was oversaturated, and I don't know if it's just like me personally, if it's like a lifestyle thing, but I never was a big fan of San Francisco. Although it's beautiful and there's a lot of opportunity, just was never like my place. But going to Miami, I don't know if it's a lifestyle thing or like you can't go wrong.
Might be a looks thing too.
Yeah, maybe.
Might be a little looks thing.
Yeah.
I remember they had early on in Clubhouse, they had London, what's her name? London, I forget her last name, but she's the mayor of San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
In a clubhouse with Suarez.
Wow.
From Miami.
Oh, I wish I heard that.
Most awkward thing of all time. And like she was scrapping and scratching to try to not fall apart, but like all these people are fucking leaving her city, and she's like, we've done such a good job. Typical politician, patting themselves on the back. We responded to COVID so great. Everything we did was awesome. And the host, who was Mark Andreessen's wife, or Ben Horowitz's wife, she kept on calling up entrepreneurs to the stage who had moved to Miami. And she was awkwardly trying to be like, yeah, so when are you coming back? And they'd be like, so the thing is, like, when it comes to, yeah, I'm not coming back. Like, then they leave the stage and shit, man. And it's just like silence, and Suarez is sitting on mute the whole time. Like, I don't even know what to say right now.
It is a shame because like it was an incredible city, and like the rush and like what they've done there is unbelievable. It's going down in the history books, but there's a time for everything. Well,
the other last question there is and we hit on this earlier with something, but I've never spent time there, so I don't know. And I've certainly never spent time in the tech circles there, so I really don't know. But there is the proverbial one thought mindset that goes on there. And it's not, people make it political, especially like the right wing will politicize that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like, this is how shit's done, right? It's one way. This is how you fund a company. This is how you build a company. These are the types of things you build. If you stray from that, fuck you, right? Which kind of goes against the entire founder's idea of like, what are we doing to change something, right? It's almost like counterintuitive. I think that a lot of people who left there, certainly motivated by COVID and what was going on and how much better Miami looked in that way. I find when I see these people talking on Twitter and talking on interviews and stuff, they're like very refreshed by the fact that there's not like one way of thinking in Miami. There's not this like, here's how shit's done. It's kind of like, all right, yeah. It's like the Wild West again.
There's some diversity.
Yes.
You go to San Francisco. So like we saw this from early on. Is like you go to San Francisco and you sit down at a coffee shop. Every single person is either one pitching a VC, 2, trying to hire an engineer, or just having a conversation about like the startup that they're thinking about going to. We're here in Jersey building this startup, and we're like, there's a handful of us, and there's nobody to talk to, nobody to communicate to, nobody to express your problems to, and you just kind of like figure it out on your own. Like, I think I'm doing the right thing. But out there, like, you're just another number. Like, there's no diversity whatsoever. And that's why I think Miami's very cool, because there's a lot of tech going there. So you still get that community, but that's not the only community there. There's a lot more going on than just solely tech.
Huge. Yeah. And you see Suarez also capitalize on attracting, like, Wall Street and stuff. I mean, he's focused. Like, I'm so impressed with that guy. He's focused on that. He's like, I don't give a shit who you're voting for. Just like, I'm trying to build my city here. And I think he also got like 90% of the last vote, so he's not worried about anything. And it's like, okay, like let's bring all the talent in. Let's just not make it one industry or whatever. Let's get tech is the best. We want to focus on that, but let's get Wall Street here. Let's get, obviously like real estate tycoons are going to need to come down there or fucking fix that problem. Like he's focused on all these communities. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I mean, like real estate's been there. If you bring tech there, naturally Wall Street needs to go and follow. Yeah. I mean, that's just kind of like the way of the world in this generation.
They never did that much in San Fran. I know they're out there, but like they didn't, you know what I mean? It's not as, they were New York companies,
Yeah, and like the New Yorkers were converted to the San Francisco way. Everybody kind of calms down. They wear button-ups and Allbirds instead of like the nice tailored suits, which is nice. It's quite refreshing.
Suits might be dead, man. You never know.
Hope so, man.
Yeah, I hope. It's like, that was so archaic. I had that moment like after college, maybe like 2 years in, where I was like, yo, I went from wearing a backwards hat and sweatpants every day to like wearing a fucking tailored suit.
And now look at you now.
Yeah, look at me now.
There you go.
Right back at my roots, baby.
That's why Miami's cool. I remember I was down there 2 weeks ago, and we saw a couple, like overheard a conversation from a couple Wall Street guys, and they were wearing like just polos, shorts, and flip-flops. We're like, when would you ever see this in New York? Never. And they were happy as hell, you know what I mean? Yeah, it was great to see.
It's a vibe. Yeah. Well, listen, man, I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah.
And we'll do it. I know, like, Anthony's going to come in here again, probably, like, end of summer. That's when we're kind of talking about it. I know you guys got some stuff going on, so I want to work it around that. Yeah. And then we'll get you in, spread you out a little bit, get you in as well. Because I think what's really cool about this podcast is we can also, been able to build relationships on my end where it's like we can see the progress of things as they go along. Yeah. Like you guys are so much, it's like a whole different world from when Anthony was here. And now I'm like, I know some of the stuff going on. I'm like, holy shit, like this might be wild in fucking August. So the listeners get to come along for that ride. And I gotta say, I think it comes across in these 2 sit downs I've had, but the culture of what you guys are building is really fucking cool, man. Yeah. Not just what you're building, the culture of it. Like you guys, and I'll get Baker to come on here too.
He's been dying to be honest. I was talking to him today. He was like, "Oh, wait, can I come with you?" I was like, "Do the next one,
dude." I need to have him on. Yeah. He's an outlier. Yeah. I like him.
But no, I appreciate those words. I mean, we've been working really hard for a lot of years on kind of building this kind of culture, and I'm glad we get to. Quite often we don't get to showcase what we're working on. Obviously, we're a bit limited on what we can say on here, but yes. You kind of have an art on how we can bring it out of each other. So I truly do appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, and you're okay on here. I mean, it's cool with it. People get it. Like if there's something that we get to where you're like, and I don't even think we had to do that.
No,
today.
Definitely not.
I was better this time than last time. Anthony was a couple times like looking at me from across. Like, no, don't go there. I'm like, okay. Yeah. But now I felt more comfortable with it. So we'll do this again, and then I'll get Baker in here in like probably a month or so. Oh, yeah. If he's game to do it.
Then he's eager.
Amazing, because I thought it was the opposite. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited because he's the CTO. He's in there fucking doing it every day.
Whole nerd out.
Oh,
try to keep up.
People are gonna be excited about that one. Oh, yeah. So Riley,
cool.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
And we'll do this again maybe like 6 months, something like that.
Sounds good, man. Cheers.
All right. Cheers to you. Thanks for coming in, dude. Everybody else, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me.